Wanted to let you know that we have Pastor Sarah Nye, who is joining us online from the Gulf Coast Conference. And then Lydia Huber is online from the Bluebonnet Conference. I think that's the right conferences. I'm going to put on my camera here and see if we can. Pastor Sarah, are you on camera?
Let me see here if I can figure that out.
We hear you loud.
There we go.
Okay. Can you see me now?
Okay, I'm going to try to tilt this a little bit so as we're doing introductions. So Pastor Sarah is gladly joining us for today. Hopefully, I think she has somebody, right, from your congregation that might be joining us?
Yes, but maybe in the future. But for right now, it's me.
Okay, perfect. We really appreciate you being a part of this for today, for however long you can. Trying to see that. Okay, so what I would like to do really quick, just say welcome. We'll do devotions and prayer in a minute, but let's do introductions. So kind of get to know each person on the team a little bit. If you could say who you are, where your ministry of context is, and maybe your relation to faith formation. And faith formation, again, is from birth to death, so it's not just necessarily just youth stuff. So maybe your area of faith formation and what you see, anything you want to add to that piece. Okay, so I'll have you start, Joel.
Oh, man. Start out. Okay. My name is Joel Timmons. I am the youth ministry resident at Shepherd of the Hills Lutheran Church. I've been there for about 7 months now, and I'm currently a seminary student as well. And so I'm in this program called Center for Youth Ministry Training.
In Austin, sorry.
Yes.
Okay, just checking.
And so it's this program where they kind of play like a matchmaker with a church, and then you have to be within like 3-hour radius of the seminary, which is actually in Austin, so convenient for me. And then you're getting your MA in youth ministry. And so that's what I'm doing right now, and it's going really well, and I'm enjoying that. And I'm from Portland, Oregon. I was raised in a Christian household. We weren't Lutherans. Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you. But then I wrestled in college, and so I had a wrestling scholarship to Grandview University in Des Moines, Iowa, and that is a small Lutheran school there, and ELCA. And I'd never been to a traditional church before, but I got plugged in there, and it was something that, for whatever reason, it really just clicked for me, and I just kind of appreciated the theology of the Lutheran Church, and it's something that really just caught my attention. And then I was really growing in my faith in college. I kind of went through a little bit of a roller coaster of figuring things out for myself. And then one day I was walking into chapel, and my campus pastor says, "Joel, you need to go into ministry." And I was like, "No, like crazy idea." But it stuck with me, and it like kind of kept bothering me, and I wasn't sure why. And then one day I was on the phone with my mom talking about it, and she just was like, "Well, if you don't go, like to seminary or whatever," she's like, "you might end up in the belly of a whale." And I was like, "Oh my God." Dropping biblical knowledge on me. And so anyways, that's kind of, it was something that I just continued to wrestle with, and I don't know, God just really put it on my heart, and so kind of here I am.
Thank you.
That story.
Thank you for sharing. Pastor Sarah and Lydia, can you guys hear okay?
Yes.
Okay.
I can anyway.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, I can too. Sorry.
Keisha.
What are the things?
I was trying to mute my microphone again.
Your ministry thing,
Okay.
and then anything about faith formation that you're
Okay.
stressing.
My name is Keisha. I am at Bethany in Fredericksburg. I am the youth minister there, or director of Children and Family Ministries, which is really long. And when I go to HEB and with my name tag on, they're like, "What's CYFM?" And I'm like, "How do you know?" Your name tag.
Forget you have known, right?
Yeah. I was raised Lutheran. My dad is a Lutheran pastor. I worked at a Lutheran camp for 5 summers, went to Texas Lutheran College. Oh, that's a lot of Lutheran. I love being Lutheran. Yeah. And I like working with everybody. So there we go.
That's awesome.
I love it.
Thank you, Keisha.
Uh-huh.
My name is Jay Miller. I'm the director of Camp Chrysalis, which is part of our camping organization for the Southwest Texas Synod. It's part of the Cross Trails Ministry. I've been there for 12 years. My role is anything that happens on site, including programming, HR, food service, and housekeeping. And most of our family or intergenerational ministry as well falls under me. So that's more so where I fit in the faith formation.
Perfect.
My name is Debbie. I am, I guess, the lay person on this team, and I worship at St. John in Marion, and I've been there all my life. I've lived in Marion all my life on the same farm I grew up on, so not going anywhere. I went to TLU, and I retired from TLU. I worked in the financial aid office as assistant director for about 5 years. So I retired in 2015. So I was on city council, and that kind of opened my eyes to things outside my church. Imagine there's this big world out there. So it's a journey I'm on to see what else is out there. And our conference dean asked, I think, put my name in the hat for Deacon Darcy, and I said, yes, we see, we don't have a youth minister at our church, and something that we need to, we're just trying to figure out where are the youth, and what can we do better to invite, to welcome, I don't know what all the words are, but so it was something that I wanted to be a part of.
Awesome. Thank you. And Lydia, do you want to introduce yourself? Are you on?
Yes, I am still here. My name is Lydia Huber. I'm also another lay person. Kara Harold Speed caught me at a bad moment and said, would you be a part of this? And I said, sure, why not? I actually attended one meeting, the first meeting in person, and missed the last one, and I apologize for not having my camera on, but I just got out of the hospital yesterday and nobody wants, I probably won't stay on for the whole meeting, but I grew up in the Catholic Church, joined the Lutheran Church when I got married, and really would like to see our youth program grow with Trinity Lutheran Church and the Bluebonnet Conference. So that's me.
Thank you. And Pastor Sarah.
Yeah, well, you said a little bit about me already. I'm Pastor Sarah, and I'm from the Gulf Coast Conference. I serve at St. John Lutheran Church. And as pastor, my role does include working with all those of every age. But I am also a mother of 3 young children, and so I have a particular heart for how our children are growing and learning in faith. One of the things that I've been really trying to work at within our congregation is finding some creative ways for how faith formation can happen, both for those kids as well as intergenerationally, and how it is that faith formation can be done in some new and exciting ways, maybe a little bit differently than what we've thought of faith formation before, but ways that make sense for this time and this place. So that's kind of where my passion lies right now, and why I'm, at least as placeholder here, joining the conversation today.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And Pastor Jessica Kane is on her way in, and she can introduce herself when she comes in. And thanks to her, she has helped actually steer this team from the beginning of it when she was the Synod coordinator for the youth ministries before I joined in. You all know a little bit about me, I think. Deacon Darcy Middleton. I serve here as Bishop's Associate for Faith Formation. I am communication and administration, but faith formation is a good piece of this. I come from a history of serving in congregations. I've served in 2 parishes as their deacon, children, youth, and family ministries. At the time, that's what they were called. And then my other one was faith formation. I am lifelong Lutheran as well, but I'm excited to be a part of this and to be here at the Southwestern Texas Synod. So I want to say thank you to each one of you for saying yes to being on. And as we move into this, you all will see what the job description is and how it all is going to play a part in this, and we'll go from there. For a devotion time together, it's always important to open up with devotion and prayer, I believe, as we begin this work. I would like to take something different, and all of you on your handout should say, there's a handout called Just What is Faith Formation? I retrieved this article, which is probably about a couple years old, from a blog from Vibrant Faith. One of the folks at Vibrant Faith, Leif Kerwald, had written an article about when the faith formation was just, that terminology was just starting to happen around, and he put words to it. So what I'd like to do is to actually take this, we're going to read it together, all paragraph by paragraph. As we're reading it, I want you to think about and highlight some words that kind of stick out. And I want you to think of the words faith formation more, not just youth ministry, but to broaden it into just what it is from birth to death as you're reading this. And anything that sticks out, underline, circle. We're just going to take a couple minutes afterward and reflect on what we've heard about with this. So, Debbie, I'm going to have you read the first paragraph and we'll just go around.
Sure. Just what is faith formation? How would you respond if a parishioner asked, so what do you really mean by faith formation? If we're going to invite leaders to do what matters in their faith formation efforts, we need to be clear about what faith formation is, yes? Problem is, faith formation has become a catch-all term that can mean just about anything a church or Christian community does, from the parish picnic, to bingo night, to sports team in the gym, to Sunday worship. It's all faith formation, right? Well, potentially yes, but there are some criteria that our programs and activities ought to meet in order to fall under the faith formation umbrella.
In a single line, we could say faith formation is equipping people to live as disciples of Jesus. In his latest book, Generations Together, John Roberto reaffirms a traditional but very rich notion that faith formation informs, forms, and transforms the person, whether child, youth, or adult, into a robust, vital, and life-giving Christian faith that is holistic, away from the head to inform, the heart to form, and the hands to transform. And faith formation does the very same for the Christian community as it immerses people into particular practices and particular way of life that identifies them as followers of Jesus. Roberto goes on to say, while expressed in many different ways, faith formation seeks to help people
grow in their relationship with God for the whole of life, live as disciples of Jesus at home, at work, in the community, and in the world, develop an understanding of the Bible and their faith tradition, deepen their spiritual life and practices, engage in service and mission to the world, participate in the life and ministries of their faith community.
So faith formation may indeed occur at the parish picnic or on the gym floor, but it has little to do with eating hot dogs or sinking baskets, and a whole lot to do with forming disciples.
Okay, thank you for reading. I would like to take a moment to just kind of reflect and hear from you all what words or what phrases stood out when we say the word faith formation from this article, or anything that you have gleaned from elsewhere.
Well, first of all, so that question, so what do you really mean by faith formation? When you asked us to introduce ourselves and talk about faith formation, I was like, I don't know what to talk about because it's everything. So I'm in that same boat.
Okay. Perfect. Hi, Pastor Jessica.
Good morning.
Pastor Jessica is here, and we have Lydia and Pastor Sarah online. And by the way, we're recording.
Okay. Okay, so be careful what you say.
Yeah.
There you go. We are just going over for our devotion time, just what is faith formation. We read the article and we're talking about that. Okay, anybody else?
I think it's important that something that we're going through in our church and is equipping the youngsters, or talking about that this is a lifelong process. We have seen in the past years that the kids sparingly come to Sunday school, but for some reason they have to be in confirmation, and they don't know the stories. They don't know why they're there, other than grandma or mom's making them come. And then we never see them again. So this idea, which it should have been, but it's something that we, I think, as our church for sure has to get back into teaching, it's lifelong. It's, you bring your babies and you don't leave after confirmation. You don't leave when you go to college, or, so I like the idea that we need to be talking about that again. We hadn't, that I was aware or a part of, hadn't been talking about it in a long time, so.
And I think to add to that, like, it seems like the confirmation part of it is maybe of this 3 informs, forms, and transforms. That might be just part 1.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they're leaving at that part 1, and they still have 2 parts that they haven't really like lived into yet. And it just seems like there's a drop off there. So
Exactly.
how do we take that next step to forming and then transform?
Because once you inform and you transform, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I think, too, if anybody in their faith, if they're not studying the Bible, they're not in the Word, and they're not being informed of what's in there, they can't transform. It's just they're in their own little world. Right?
Pastor Sarah or Lydia?
Well, one of the things that stuck out to me is the idea of faith formation as equipping people to live as disciples of Jesus. I don't always enough talk about that language of discipleship and what that looks like in our daily life. And as you go down to that point, live as disciples of Jesus at home, at work, in the community, in the world. It's really everywhere. So think about how are we forming disciples or encouraging, equipping disciples to go be disciples everywhere that they might wind up. That was a helpful way for me to think about faith formation.
Yeah, I agree with Sarah, Pastor Sarah. That stuck out at me too.
There is a lot of information and a lot of books and articles that are kind of coming forth in terms of talking about faith formation and what it is and just that language change. And so I think one of the reasons that I was called to the Synod as well as part of my portfolio is to really help with the congregations, the language of what that means and how do we do that. And I think there's a whole broader sense of doing that. And just as Pastor Sarah, equipping, how do we as congregations equip those in our congregations to become disciples, and then that they too can also equip each other with that. So, any other thoughts or reflection?
I think some of what I'm learning about it is, in terms of equipping people, is talking about not just the birth to death thing, but how all of that happens together sometimes too, because we get so very much like confirmation and then figure it out for yourself, or, we'll do this thing for the kids, but the adults are going to do this. And in my congregation, yes, yeah. My congregation last year, in the past has had adult Sunday school and nothing at all for children. And so that's been part of the conversation of if we're doing education time for some people, we're going to do it for everyone. And so we're going to do it together and we're going to figure out how that's going to work, because it's going to be weird and some people aren't going to like it. And it's probably going to be a lot more chaotic than our nice little conversations around the table that we do most Sundays.
Yes.
I was wondering how they, and this is something that we're struggling with, can't do, is just how to breed loyalty to, if it's from youth to adulthood and beyond, just how do you create somebody that is loyal that continues to come back?
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing those reflections. And as we move into what this team is about and our purpose, we will be hearing more and kind of keeping this in mind. Let's open with word of prayer. Good and gracious God, we give you thanks for this day and the many blessings that you bestow upon us. We give you thanks that we can come together to discern, to talk about, to study, to wonder, and to ask questions. But more importantly, to be insightful of what it means to be in community and to make disciples and what lifelong faith formation is really about. We ask that you would be with us today, that you bless our time together, our conversation, that it may be fruitful, and that we can go out to be your servants. In your name we pray. Amen. Just real quickly, Pastor Jessica, you want to introduce yourself? Where are you from? I don't know if you know everybody here. Will.
Sure. I know everyone except I'm guessing you're Joel from
I am
the
Joel.
people here.
Yeah, process of elimination. Love it.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I am Pastor Jessica. I am the pastor of Living Word Lutheran, which is in Buda, and been there about a year and 3 months now. So that's who I am. And just so everyone knows, if I leave, I got a call that one of my kids might be sick. So I'm on call for going back and rescuing them. Or rescuing the rest of the class, I guess. A little bit of both, huh?
Totally understand. 'Tis the season. Well, thank you all again for being here. I want to draw your attention to the next sheet called Faith Formation Mutual Ministry Team Description. So when I was called to this position as Bishop's Associate for Faith Formation, and as I alluded to earlier before Pastor Jessica came, I thanked her, and thank you again publicly, for actually helping create this mutual ministry team. And this was part of her assignment when she was in the role of the youth coordinator for Southwestern Texas Synod. And so some of the work has kind of, and Debbie, I think, was on it, and Lydia, I think, was on it, right? And Morgan was on it. So as you can see, the Faith Formation Mutual Ministry purpose is to gather in prayer, conversation, and reflection regarding the vision and goals for the Faith Formation Ministries of the Southwestern Texas Synod. I need to stop there and say, originally the wording was Children, Youth, and Family Ministries, the very beginning of it. We, as a synod, have changed it, and part of that is because when I was called as Bishop's Associate, the new bishop, our new bishop, Sue Briner, has decided to, in talking with everything and learning the new terminology, as you will hear, is faith formation. So it doesn't mean that we're excluding children, youth, and family. We are including them, but we're just broadening it to the lifelong learning pieces for faith formation. So the team will meet in person twice per year and electronically at other times. The team will be comprised of a variety of members, including the Faith Formation Bishop's Associate and ending up to about 6 people from conference around the Synod. So the goal is that Gulf Coast, Rio Grande, and Blue Bonnet at least have one, can be combined as one, but it would be cool to have, and I really did try to reach out and have succeeded to find somebody from each of them. Have one each plus 3 from the remaining conferences. The members will serve 2-year terms, and this is what we're going to be kind of staggering and figuring out here. So the goals of the team are as follows, and this again kind of came up from previous, but we can add, we can take away, but this is what's out there for right now. As we're going to pray for one another in the ministry, be the eyes and ears for the Faith Formation Ministry around the Synod and give feedback at team meetings, listen to leaders, the paid and volunteered around the Synod involved in Faith Formation Ministries, reflect with the Bishop's Associate on their work and the goals around faith formation, celebrate and honor the good work that is being done with faith formation in the Synod, advocate for faith formation leaders of the Synod, set the vision and goals of faith formation ministry and the role of the Bishop's Associate for faith formation in conjunction with them, envision the vision of faith formation ministry in the Synod and evaluate annually, set short-term and long-term goals for faith formation ministry within the Synod and evaluate annually, clarify the role of the Bishop's Associate for faith formation in relation to the goals within the Synod staff, Synod council, and other leaders. So the expectation of team members is to be active in the life of a congregation within the Synod, commit to confidentiality, honest and willing to discuss sometimes challenging topics, advocate for the faith development of all people in the Synod, especially children, youth, and families, attendance at twice annual in-person meetings, March and November around then, and digital meetings around June or August. Communicate regularly electronically, and be observant and in tune with the Synod, or at least conferences, faith formation ministries. That, in a nutshell, is the description, team description that was kind of put together. At this moment, before I get to the team members, Any questions about any of those? I know some of them sounded repetitive. And those who had kind of formed this together, maybe if I could have Pastor Jessica or Debbie or Lydia, kind of, where did this originate from the very get-go?
This came from the congregation mutual ministry description, and then we took that and made it work for a synodical-based mutual ministry team that has a specific function. So we're not the mutual ministry team for the bishop. We're specifically for faith formation.
Okay.
So I think these are fewer job descriptions than the mutual ministry at the congregational level is supposed to have, which is a little bit over the top.
What is a
And then-
mutual ministry team in a congregation?
The mutual ministry team in a congregation happens sometimes and is supposed to be a group of people from the congregation who meet with the pastor or pastors if there are multiple, and then some congregations also include people like the youth pastor. It just depends on their particular team, to talk about how to do ministry together, so mutual ministry. And the goal is, there's several pieces to the goal. One is to kind of vision together. One is to foresee the places where there are going to be issues. So to say, I've made some changes at Living Word and I'll go to my mutual ministry committee and I'll say, these are the reasons why I'm doing this. These are the places I think we might fall into trouble with it. Do you still think it's worth doing? And then we talk about it together. And then together commit to explain why things are happening. And then the third reason for it is, which this team is not probably going to do much of this, but the third thing that happens with mutual ministry committees in congregations is that when someone has an issue with one of the leaders and is uncomfortable speaking directly to the leader, they can go to someone from mutual ministry, and mutual ministry can then have that conversation. And you cannot overlap counsel and mutual ministry.
We do not have a mutual ministry team.
So you're definitely not part of it then.
So this is just a way for people to communicate with each other
Yes,
within an organization.
and try to avoid some of the pitfalls of the pastor made this decision and we hate it, or some people have been saying, and then that's what, the kind of feedback. The goal is to have open and clear communication about the life of ministry.
And I see the goal of this faith formation mutual ministry team to do a couple things. One is to help be my ears and eyes and listening with them out in the synod, because you guys are in the congregations and can hear. And two is to help, especially for the first couple of years, set some goals for our synod. What is faith formation going to look like within our synod? And that was basically the I would say the request also from Synod Council and Bishop is to say we need to figure out what's going on. Part of the reason Bishop Sue, from my understanding, had heard from the past, and we're not going to dwell on the past, is that a lot of times, and at that time they were called children, youth, and family folks, were feeling neglected and not heard, and people weren't getting, to have good salaries or being equally paid, just different things. And so to create this team that we as a synod do care for folks who are out in the congregations doing the work in the ministries and camps and everything, and how can we support as a synod, to say that we are in this together. So that's part of it. The big piece that we're really going to focus on today is, because it's a number one really burning thing, is youth gatherings. We'll get to that piece in a little bit. Anyway, so team members. I have all listed all the team members, and you'll see that a couple of them are not here here in person or online. Pastor Dan Hine is from Zion Lutheran in he's Alamo Conference, and then Morgan Gates, she's at LSTC, and she's a Civil Oak Creek. And I think everybody else there. What I did is I decided to, and you guys can tell me yes or no. The names underlined will serve 2 years, while the others will serve for 3 years just to get this started, and then we will knock off. It'll be 2 years, as stated at the above. Members will serve 2-year terms. But as we're getting this started, we'll kind of do that. I invited Cross Trails person, Jay Miller, specifically Cross Trails, and it doesn't have to be Jay, it can be indoor, whatever. But because Cross Trails is a big component, does work closely with Faith Formation in everything that they do, want them to be a part of this and welcome their input and their, comments and stuff. And they can say yay, nay, whatever. But for the first part, I would really like to have a Cross Trails person for at least for a year. Whatever, we can adjust that later. So does that look okay? So I have Lydia and Debbie and Pastor Jessica and Morgan going off after 2 years. And then we'll then start doing the transferring. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. If there aren't any other comments or questions on the ministry team description, we will move on then to the faith formation within the ELCA and the Southwestern Texas Synod and how that's kind of all set up. So as I stated earlier, the language of faith formation has come to the daylight instead of using children, youth, and family. So if there's a handout I passed out to you, it's called the Framework for Faith Formation in the ELCA. It's about a 3-page document. In 2015, the ELCA, bless you, has have what is called a faith formation team as well in Chicago that is has a person from Chicago, but then has folks from all the ELCA that is on this team. And what they did is they put together this document called For Faith Formation ELCA and what the Lutherans believe and why faith formation. The theological framework through the Lutheran lens, the Faith Formation Network, they have effective faith formation, perspective, practices, orientation, the values, missions, values, and guidelines. So this is just a reading material for you to look at your own. We're not going to go through it. We don't have time. But just to let you know that the ELCA from Chicago put together also a faith formation network. However, they also have a staff person for the different pieces of the faith formation that they do. So from the first third of life, they have Pastor Janelle Hooper out of Houston, and she does contract work. So she is based in Houston, but is part-time with the ELCA for the first third, the young ones. Then we have for youth ministry, Rachel Alley, and she was just here at the senior high youth gathering, and she does the junior high, senior high youth ministries of the ELCA and resources folks, things for folks in the ELCA. Then we have Savannah Sullivan, who does young adult ministries within the ELCA and works with congregations and will be trying to do young adult ministry resourcing. And then we have Brenda Smith, who we will have at our Synod Assembly this year, who does the adult faith formation pieces or resourcing and discipleship things within the ELCA. So the ELCA has intentionally also put in place some paid staff folks that do faith formation. So they also see the importance of each, but they also see how big of it is and why they have a staff person for each. And so we can relate to any and all of them. And then, of course, we have Molly Beth Dean, who is specifically for the ELCA youth gathering, the senior high youth gathering. And that is just her framework of what she does. And then for camping ministries, we have Dawn Johnson, who is the Lutheran Outdoor Ministry person from the ELCA that relates to all the camps and does do that. So the ELCA does take faith formation very seriously, and I wanted to just share that. So in terms of the Southwestern Texas Synod, we take faith formation seriously as well. And even though the name prior was Children, Youth, and Family, but again, we have decided to combine it all into one and call it faith formation so that we have an eye into the whole thing. Yes, there may be more direct route to the youth ministries, but I am here to also help congregations resources for children and for adults. So it's the combination of everything. So that's kind of where we are at. What we would like to do with this group is to have conversation a little bit about what do you think the Southwestern Texas Synod needs to really focus on around faith formation within the Synod.
Is that a question you want us? Okay.
Sorry, yeah.
Just making sure.
Yeah, so now it's open for discussion. What do you think the Southwestern Texas Synod should put their efforts in terms of faith formation? Where at, what?
Do those people that are assigned from the ELCA, do they have standards or things that they say have worked in the past, or have said this is what you should be looking at least, or are they brand new to?
They're pretty open
Got it.
and always evaluate.
One of the things that I'm picking up here in the Gulf Coast Conference is that we have a lot of small congregations in this area, and congregations that don't feel like they have children. Whether they do or not may be questionable, but they're not attending in a way that they're visible. And so what I hear from pastors and leaders often is, well, we don't have the children to do faith formation. Now, I mean, it encompasses a wider age group, of course. We're talking about the whole span, but I think there's an attitude that exists, at least in some places, where unless you have a big Sunday school, faith formation isn't something that you do. Does that make sense? And I don't know if maybe it's just the few
Yes.
people that I'm talking to, but one of the things that I think is important is how we talk about faith formation in such a way that it really is, we're seeing that this is everyone in all of our congregations. It's not just whether or not you happen to have a robust Sunday school, that this is for all of our congregations and for all of our members, not just those who have critical mass in those areas.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think for me, there's at least two things. One is somewhat related to that. We do have a lot of small congregations in the Synod overall. And faith formation at any level can be difficult in a small congregation. We have some ways where some of us have kind of worked our own ways of collaborating. I know I work with a group of churches that are doing confirmation together, and the camps have been really excellent about working with us, as annoying as it is to work with 4 different congregations functioning as one. So there are some ways where that's worked. There's another group I know that's working like that too. But just some resources and some encouragement to do things together is part one, and then to do things differently would be part two. Traditional Sunday school is pretty much working in my congregation, but it's not going to work forever, and it's pretty much working. It's still very difficult. We have about 13 kids, but they range in age from preschool to 7th grade. And so 13 kids is a great group, but you cannot consistently do class with a preschooler and a 7th grader and then a whole bunch of kids in between. So sticking to our same, this is how we do Sunday school and this is how we plan to divide them up. To make that happen is very difficult because then I'm looking at trying to find 4 teachers from a pool of an average of 45 people coming on Sunday. So just encouragement and permission, I think, in some ways, to do things differently. Whether there are examples of that or not, I'm not sure. I'm not sure so much that we need examples, because then a lot of the time we end up like, well, this church did it this way, so we're going to do it exactly the same and it will work for us. I don't know that we need that, or if we just need, it's okay to try something new. It's okay to say we're not doing Sunday school this way anymore, or we're not doing Sunday school like this for the next year. We're going to try a completely different thing. And if it is awful, then we can always go back.
I think just to have the congregations be aware that it's okay to step out of that box, because I see us struggling. Well, we don't have Sunday school, but we have a new pastor too, so things I know will change. But it's you're stuck in that rut, and you don't know how to get out, don't want to get out. All of those, I think, play a part. So maybe the encouragement says it's okay to shut down some of those Sunday school rooms. It's okay, you know. And if that doesn't work anymore, try something different. And I think it's just the idea that don't try to beat it up to where it's just not going to work. It's just not there anymore. And it's sad, yes, we have to mourn over it, but move on, I guess. So maybe just encouragement, ideas, getting that to the churches, how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm pretty new to my context, but something that I've realized is like, how do I find something that is going to be worth their time and their eyes? Because at least for me, like we're in Austin, and there's a lot going on, and there's so many different pressures and so many different things on their schedule. Like they have to prioritize. So how do we make what we're doing a priority for them instead of soccer game, instead of I have practice, I have homework, and those are all important things. But how do we
how do we get into that list?
Yes.
That priority list.
And it's hard. It's hard because of all those things. We're the ones that offer the grace. Say it's okay. Like we're the church. Like that's our job. Like whereas your coach can yell at you for not going to the extra workouts. Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just a matter of finding something that's really valuable.
I think it's prioritizing not only for kids but for parents.
Yes, that too.
And that's, as we go into faith formation, like it's training parents to still view this like it was important to you at some point in time because you're in the church. So how is it still important to you now?
Yeah.
And why then would you pass that on to your kids? So again, it's loyalty.
Yeah.
And so there's some sort of like in camp we would call that tradition. Like there's some sort of tradition, but I don't want to get stuck in a tradition of this is the way we've done it all the time. But creating traditions that are enticing for people to be like, oh, I want to be a part of that, or I want to earn that merit badge, or I want to do that kind of stuff.
I want to be alive.
Yeah, I want to do something that is set traditionally, but maybe done differently.
Well, some of that is teaching parents to model those things too, because if you're dropping your kid off at Sunday school and then leaving, that's telling them one thing about faith formation. That is how we get into this trap of faith formation is just about Sunday school and it's only about kids.
The other thing that
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say the other thing is, though, I think sometimes the kids are actually the ones that are easier to motivate than the parents in some respects. That what I've been trying to do in our congregation is to almost think of children as missionaries to the family in terms of if the kids can get excited about what's happening, if the kids can kind of get what's important and why this is a place that they want to be or a event that they want to be involved in or excited about the gospel, perhaps hearing for the first time, that they can almost be motivators to parents who are tired and worn out from running here and there and everywhere, but they'll do anything for their kids. And so I've tried to kind of encourage those that I've talked with to not only depend upon parents for the motivation, but to look even to the next generation to find a little bit of that, maybe that excitement that's been lost somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
I would like there to be some sort of mentorship between last third generation people, last third of life people, into much younger too, just to have some sort of intergenerational, but also like there's just such a vast knowledge base too, and it might be people with more time as well. So how can we encourage that if we are truly from birth to death? How do we make that a cycle of people that can be utilized well? I know St. Martin's had done that for a while. St. Martin's and Austin had done that with confirmation students. I don't know if they're still doing that or not, but I thought that was a really neat idea.
I've heard of some churches in our area doing that.
Are these the kinds of things that you want? Okay,
Yes.
just making sure.
No, this is open
Okay,
discussion,
cool.
open reflection. I'm taking notes as well. But this is just to kind of brainstorm and get some ideas and, just kind of say, I'm curious as to see, and then we'll kind of bring this together and see where we're at. Because we're not going to be able to do them all, especially all together, but maybe down the road as we create a timeline of how we can kind of shape the faith formation within our synod. I'd be interested to hear more from Jay, especially at camping. You've been there 12 years now across
Sure.
trails. What have you seen with faith formation and the difference from the beginning to now where we are at?
The largest growing programs that we have right now are all based on family and grandparent camping.
Okay.
They're the ones that fill up the fastest and that we have waiting lists for. So there is obviously a need for this somewhere, and something that I think that we do very well, which is nice too. But yeah, there's obviously a need for one or the other. Our family camp, as soon as we changed it to family and grandparent camp, changed drastically in our attendance. So that was kind of interesting. We are serving much more youth much more younger youth, like upper elementary age groups, as opposed to confirmation students than we used to. But our high school programs have increased in the past 10 years as well. So it's kind of that middle age group that actually has gone down. And I don't know if that is because of commitments from pastors and so they just don't have the time to teach their own congregational confirmation program at camp, which was historically what had happened. But we're seeing less church workers teaching their own curriculum and using ours instead.
So they used to bring their groups to camp?
They used to,
as
yeah,
part
to
of their
do
confirmation?
their confirmation program and to lead it themselves.
Yeah.
So that, they might have talked about, while at camp that week, they might have talked about communion time or baptism or something.
Or one time, as a cabin leader, my kids watched the Luther movie. Like,
Yeah, so something
Whatever.
church history
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
stuff too. So that is happening less and less. Some of that I think is also trust in our programming, which is nice as well. Let's see.
well, and as a youth minister who takes kids to camp, and I know we don't go to y'all in the summer, but I'm not concerned about teaching them confirmation during the summer. I want them to form relationships
Sure.
with each other and with the adults that are there, and I think that's more important than.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I could talk about the benefits of camping community day and night. That is something that I would love to speak to everyone about. But the other things that are going really well for us, that we've seen drastic increases in these confirmation programs that we've been having twice a year, too, in the fall and spring. They have grown almost exponentially, which has been really nice. Those were geared initially towards churches that didn't have youth workers, especially. And so they could gather together at the time to not only see that there are other people in confirmation, to have a large enough class size to do something, and also to hit some of those confirmation standards or pillars, I guess, too. So it's a nice and interactive way to do that. What else? What other things can I tell you?
I was just
go on.
curious, I wanted the folks to hear what has been going,
Yeah.
what changes you have seen. And
Yeah.
it's fascinating that you said the family and grandparent camps.
Yeah,
Like, I'm
those
like,
for sure are over the top.
Yeah.
Like with our Advent camps book up in the summertime. And we'll have a waiting list, and we have like crying parents because they cannot get in with their friends and things too. So
And y'all have 3 weekends
we
now
have
of that.
3 weekends of that now.
Mhm.
So it's wild.
It's good to hear.
Yeah, the struggle with that is that we are still trying to figure out how to do that intergenerationally too. We have activities that are intergenerational, but how to do our Bible study parts are especially difficult. Getting content that is appropriate for all ages, but also having them in the same room, which we've only tried once, proved to be difficult. It's tough to have a grandparent that wants to learn and grow themselves and also have that preschooler in there that is just on a different learning level and style.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about especially now you're coming into summer camp and the recruitment of young adults.
Is
The struggle.
incredibly difficult. Harder and harder. There's all sorts of outside pressures of recruiting students. A lot of times,
What age group are you guys talking
our staff members have to have graduated high school to
You're talking
be in a
about-
supervisory role.
about? Okay.
Or do you want to talk about workers or campers?
No workers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So workers
Counselors.
that outside of that. So there is they're hard to find. They aren't connected in their campus ministries as much as they used to be. The ones that are deeply committed, and our campus ministry programs produce great students and staff members and people of the world. They do really well. I cannot speak highly enough about them. They're clearly motivated people. It's just how to get them connected. Part of which is a camp struggle too, is how to get those campus ministers involved as well. There's definitely parental pressure to be home more so than to have a job that is high paying. Parents are concerned that they don't see their kids anymore. We had 3 staff members quit because of parental pressure to come home, as opposed to they weren't making enough money or they were unhappy. Or, it was like parents were homesick for their children. So that was new and different last year, especially.
Yeah. Were they young staff?
No, not all of them. No. We're recruiting more internationally than we ever have. They are difficult to find because they do not typically come to a religious camp. It's harder to find those, which may be the same in the United States too. It's hard to find kids that want to work at a religious camp, though across the camping board, recruitment is harder. So finding an in to students is difficult. It's also difficult for campus ministers to how to know that they are out there and where to find them.
Yeah. Which I think is another issue, is that sure, we have campus ministries like here in Seguin and in Austin and San Antonio, but what about
Victoria.
oh yes, Austin.
And Kingsland?
Yeah,
Kingsville.
That's the one.
Kingsville.
Yeah, but I have kids that are like at Tarleton, and it's a very Baptist area, and there's no churches or groups for them that they feel comfortable in.
Same even in Lubbock.
Yeah. And I think that's important because, that's such a crazy time in your life. If I didn't have the campus ministry at TLU, I'd probably, I don't know, think I'm through a lot of shit. So
I think
That's where all my friends were from.
I think camp also promotes incredible people. Like afterwards too, I think these are people that do stay connected or have a heart for justice or they want to be a part of the church longer too. So I think that is a nice way to get them reincorporated in. It's just what the church doesn't really, speaking from experience, the church did not look at me as a young adult of the world or actively recruit me into their congregations either. So we'd say that there's a tough time between confirmation and high school, and a tough time between high school and college, how to get them connected. But there's also a time that after college or in college to being an adult, quote unquote, adult, that is difficult to get students into unless they are married or have a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you find with campers, when they're at camp, like the helicopter parents, are there parents who like call in during the
Yes.
week? Did you find that as on a rise from the past?
We've had to take extra steps for parents to be in communication with their children somehow.
Yeah.
Whether that is through, we've set up email programs, pictures online parents want to see all the time. And we get horror stories too of, my kid is unhappy, how do you know? Because that's her Monday bow in her hair, and it's Tuesday. So silly things happen with parents. Parents mean very well, they do. But there's definitely a feeling of anxiety that they cannot let go, and which is difficult and something that we've had to training into parents are used to.
Send me a picture of the right spot.
I promise I won't do that to you. I'm going to be like, goodbye.
You say that now.
Yeah.
You say that now.
I'll cry all the way home, but I will leave you alone.
So yeah, I mean there needs to be intentionality with parents to train them to say that they are okay and that the parent will be okay too. It's really like there should be a camp for parents.
Yeah.
For kids going to camp.
At the same time.
Yeah.
Just in a different space.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder too.
Like, hey, go out to this restaurant all together and be like, hey, we're gonna be fun.
That's not a bad idea,
Yeah.
actually. I know, like, these days, parents, like, control what kids see on their phones, what they see on TV, what they see on the internet. And I wonder if that's part of that is because they're not controlling what.
They are just out of control.
Yeah, they're out of
They feel
control.
like they are
Yeah.
out of control. There's a newer term as opposed to helicopters, snowplow parenting as well. So that is, they get everything out of the way that might hurt that kid.
Yeah.
Instead. So that is
I have one of those.
tougher. They want to make sure that that kid succeeds in every single way, and they will do whatever it takes to get the obstacles out of the way.
Yeah. And so I think, sorry,
Go ahead.
I think just learning how to navigate the culture that we're in as well. The people who are now becoming parents, they're dealing with something totally different than our parents were. And the kids are being raised in a society where cell phones have always existed. And so I think it's just being able to navigate those things well. Because I think that's something that the church doesn't do. Yeah.
There's something to be said about technology and community too, and just how technology can enhance or negate that too. So I would like to see this community embrace technology somehow, or this part of the formation, like embrace it in ways that are positive, but also be able to take a step back from it as well, to have distinct periods of time where they can be used. Because something that we even struggle with is we ask kids to bring a Bible to camp. My Bible's on my phone. If you wanted me to pull out a Bible right now, I've got it. There's an essential skill on how to use a physical in-print Bible too. But it would be nice to be able to teach skills maybe of how to use, maybe this faith formation, how to use skills of technology as well as skills that we don't see as digital, I guess.
Yeah. Or like cameras too, like everybody's camera's on their phone.
Right.
Yeah.
So if they're at camp and they want to take pictures, but they can't have their phone.
Right. And we see Instagram would help camp immensely, probably. If they could tag if they could be like, I just shot a bull at archery, and they Instagram that, it creates excitement for other kids to come. But at the same time, what could they possibly get into because it was connected to the internet is a heavy weighing thing.
So navigation is very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jay, for sharing, because those are very helpful, especially from the camping perspective of where faith formation, what you're dealing with in terms of that. Any other things that come about in terms of faith formation that you guys can think of?
I'm just thinking about resources that are available on the phone, because that is one of the things, I think a lot of people know they can get a Bible on their phone. Do they know how to get a Bible that is a translation that we in the ELCA would approve?
Yeah.
Is one, how to use these things for good, how do you search something about the Bible and actually find a site that's helpful. My mom is in Bible study every Thursday, and she texts me all the time all these questions, and a lot of them I'm like, I don't know, so I Google them, but I know to skip the first 5, that come up.
Or when you type in Lutheran and that blog that comes up, that guy that bashes the Lutheran.
Don't read Exposing the ELCA.
Yeah.
But other things too. There's an app that I have that is a praying app that reminds me every hour to pray for a certain prayer that, it randomly picks one from my list of prayers. And it's one, I just bought the upgrade so that I can do a group, and my church can have a prayer group.
That's cool.
So like a prayer chain, but nobody has to actually pick up the phone and call each other. And I'm toying with the idea of doing some Bible studies by GoToMeeting or Zoom or something like that, where I heard it from other people who said, we're doing this, and theirs is specifically for young families. They have it late enough at night so all the kids are in bed and the parents can actually participate in a weekday Bible study. So I think it would be good to have some resources, and I think that's easy to kind of make a list of, here are some things that you can carry with you for faith formation. So you are praying all day long, or there's Bible apps that can do the same thing, like read this Bible verse today, or emails you can subscribe to that do the same kind of thing. I think embracing the fact that technology is a fact of life and how to use it for good would be really helpful from any level of the church.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. To do all that.
I also like the point of kind of getting creative with the timing, like with young adults, with their kids going to bed. You find time, they're in bed now, let's have our Bible study then. I think that's something that we need to do, is get creative with our time. How do we fit into this ever-changing society's schedule, Instead of having concrete Wednesday night youth group and Sunday morning, like Sunday school, I think maybe just getting creative in that sense might be really beneficial.
Yeah.
And how to connect people. I think it's important for us to still have those things while also recognizing, what's going to be there every week. So how do we keep people connected on the weeks that they're not?
Yeah.
I started putting my sermons online, and I have heard, it's been maybe 6 weeks, and I have heard probably 16 different comments about how helpful that is for this person, or for their mom that I've never met, or, and my mom who's really excited about them. She asks
So there will always be at least one
She
view.
texts me on Sundays if it gets too late in her opinion and asks me if I preached on something. Yeah.
We're going to all.
I will take that even farther, is that I attend I attend church online more often than I do in person, just because my congregation of residents is in San Antonio, and we work a lot of weekends. So I actually attend a church in Tennessee because I know the pastor there, and he speaks well, and I like what he has to say. So how to, again, use technology well. But I also think we need to state that there are great times and great ways to disconnect too. I think that is completely important and should go back and forth just for relationship building.
Yeah. Those healthy ways. I'm trying to think who else is online here. Somebody dropped off here. These are very helpful conversations. Pastor Sarah, anything else that you can think of or want to add?
I'm just enjoying listening to all the fun ideas that people are playing around with and experimenting with, and I think that's going to be something that's really important, is to kind of look at faith formation in this point in time as kind of a great experiment, and what different types of things can we try, and tools we can put in people's hands, and understand that some of that's going to work great in one place and maybe not in another, and it's going to look a little different someplace else. But that the more that we experiment, the more we learn, and the more we find these things that can work and will work in our congregations.
Absolutely.
I think part of this is sticking to things that are working too, or that we see value in, and promoting those.
Yeah.
If it works, and it works, 90% of the time for 90% of the people, why are we not making sure that happens? So
And
if
being
it is,
okay quitting something that doesn't work.
yeah, so if that, I'm going to be selfish and say, if that is camp for you or for most people, I was like, then we should be like, okay, like your church isn't doing this. Come on, like, let's make this a standard that, yes, this is something good that we see that can't happen. So if there's somewhere that we can say that here are very certain things or ideas, that's why I asked that initial question of if they are doing something or have benchmarks of things that work, like, let's make those things happen, or put an emphasis area into those things.
Or somehow maybe share those things.
Yeah.
Those things that work.
Yeah.
Sometimes you think about things and you think it to death, and you don't think of something that's just really very simple.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Like for my church, we have a group of 8th graders that have been going to camp as a group since 2nd grade, I think.
Sure.
And they're self-titled in their little group chat called the God Squad. And they love each other, and that's something that's held them together. And that's totally a shining point.
Yeah.
That camp.
We get a lot of that. Young people show up at our church with their friends and want to go to confirmation because their friends are going to confirmation. Well, okay, so we try to work through that. So that connection, I think, is almost the most important.
Yeah. And that kind of makes or breaks it for them. If my friend's going, I'll go, but if not, then I'm not going.
Yeah. And that's just the nature of the age group, I think, too.
Yeah.
Just the junior high. Yeah, my grandsons are that. It's like, oh my gosh, when are we going to be out of this?
Well, even
That extends far beyond.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Like,
okay.
if there's,
Yeah. I should know that,
yeah. I won't go if I don't know
Yeah, I
anybody.
don't
Well, that's all.
I want to go to a restaurant.
I kind of do that too, so.
We'll go to a
So
movie.
it is far beyond that, but creating this community is opportunity, and for some of that, it is how do we get somebody to be confident to go and do that by themselves, or to try something new. Like maybe what we need to breed or teach is an air of confidence in them, so maybe that's knowledge, or maybe that is seeing the value, or anything like that. I wonder, a group that we haven't talked about yet is, and if we say it's from birth to death, are super young children. Like, what do you do for 0 to 3-year-olds too?
Yeah.
That is a group that we have not.
Yep.
And that was out of my wheelhouse.
Yeah. It's out of mine too. Yeah.
I think
Our
that,
Sunday school starts at 3.
Ours does too.
Right.
So,
And we have a nursery, but I mean,
Something that we've done at our church with that age group is in our sanctuary, we have what we call a playground. And it's this little carpeted area kind of towards the side. And there's different books. We have our worship toolkits for young kids with little things they can do to participate in worship. And that's been something that's actually been huge. Like, parents love it because they
So
can
they're
just kind
there
of,
during worship.
yes. And so then it teaches this idea of being a part of worship, even at a young age. And I think that'll start a intergenerational like importance with worship rather than kind of individualistic ideas that society's pushing on us.
We have a playground too at our congregation, and everyone
Yeah.
loves it. It really has been a helpful thing for our congregation.
It's fun.
and that might be something that, I said I wouldn't want to be too specific about, like, this is what this congregation is doing, but a playground is something we could get pictures from the different congregations that are doing it. We could say, this is how they're doing it. And
yeah.
that's very much like, oh, we need to buy this thing for babies and this thing for older kids. And I think that would be really helpful to share.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think there's a certain thing, like when you go to a conference or continuing ed, there's a lot of philosophy that you're trying to absorb and then somehow take somebody else's idea and use it in your context. But there's definitely a value for like, this is something concrete that you can do right now.
Yeah.
And for people that don't have dedicated people to do it, that is what I think they need, if they have a resource. So maybe there's something we did for youth ministers or faithful. I don't even know what to call them.
Well, you call them ministers.
But I mean, camp held a training for them to using our staff training things, which worked well. But even I was we're going through online training today through another company and trying to weed out what is good and what is bad. And I was like, this would totally work for so many people beyond outside of camp or recreation or whatever. I was like, this is just common sense working with people. I won't even say youth because it is nice. Like, this is a skill that not a lot of people have. They are not teaching in any school, but is so valuable in life. And it has nothing to do with faith formation besides being a good person of the world and being a good, and it goes into more pure ministry training more so than anything.
Yeah.
Camp taught me a lot of life skills.
Yeah.
I know how to properly clean a toilet because
That's important.
Became important, girl.
But hopefully also how to resolve conflict.
While you're cleaning the
yes.
When you dirtied it, you're gonna have a conversation.
Yeah. Very helpful, very helpful. But I think we could easily have resources. And I think for the small congregations, but for all congregations, even to think outside the box, to be able to think that is like, once you put something in the mind, it's like, oh, never even thought of it that way. And then they can take that and adjust it to their surroundings. So yeah, being able to.
And sometimes too, those congregations work with King's House, and, well, we tried it this way, but that didn't work.
Right.
And you're thinking, oh, well, we would have thought that would work. So maybe that kind of helps those that don't have the full staff and just really don't know where to look.
Yeah.
To try to do something.
Well, like a playground would not work in my context. Like we're having trouble right now trying to move a piano and people want to take out pews for a piano. Anyway, but.
And they don't want to take them out.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I think it's just, you spitball enough ideas, eventually some of them, you're like, okay, I can grab that.
Yeah.
And I don't need
I'll grab a
that,
piece of
Sure.
I do think, though, that we need to be better about making those resources available because I started at Bethany in 2014 and have been going to the youth ministry meetings, and we always talk about resources. But it's kind of like when you see your friend and you're like, oh, we haven't seen each other in a while. We should do something. Yeah. And we don't do anything.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. We talk about resources and having the need for resources, but we never do anything about it.
Maybe do it.
And so I think that needs to be like a
Number one priority.
yeah.
So prioritizing other things. And we will get to that point in a minute, but anyway.
It would
Cool.
be, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I can't have an accreditation process that we have to go through. So there are certain standards that you have to meet. So I wonder if there, and some of those even are like our risk analysis. So it's something internal that we say, these are all of the risks, this is how we manage them, this is what we do. But if there is some sort of, if there is no mutual ministry team, could you create something that says, have you thought about this area? Have you thought about this area? And maybe it's just a questionnaire that they can fill out themselves to do that. So there could be just how you, it's how you start speaking about it in your congregation. But then the other thing that we do is that to become accredited, a visitor has to come and see you doing these things in action too. But as a visitor, I have to make sure that people are being safe, but I also glean ideas of what they're doing. I go, that's incredible. Like I would have never thought to use tube socks as arm guards instead of the stupid leather things that we have, but that is genius. And it's little stupid stuff that you like pick up. But how nice would it be for somebody to come into a different congregation? And so we can talk about it all we want, but like this playground, I would just be like, I don't know how that works. Like you can explain it. Would that work in my congregation? Maybe you don't know because you haven't seen it actually happen.
That's why I want to take a sabbatical.
Right. But
which we have to have a policy for because we don't have one.
There is some sort of continuing ed part of this too. That could happen. So I think that it would be nice to not only have like some sort of standards to go to, or at least something that gets everybody thinking about what they are doing either in their congregations or amongst multiple congregations, or I don't know how faith formation will work in particular, but also then a way to actually see it.
Yeah.
I know that's difficult and time consuming.
But now with technology, we could videotape and have it made available, when they click here to see this in action or whatever.
But even then, it's, for me, for the vibe, like, we'll stay with this playground here. If Keisha were to go, if she were to videotape it, she'd understand how it works, but she wouldn't understand why or how it got to that point.
Yeah.
So if she went in person, she could ask, like, the skeptic or the, the youth worker or whoever that is in there. She'd be like, hey, we're having trouble. Like, oh, we struggled moving our piano too. And then we got, they could explain the steps of how that worked if she was inquisitive about it. So, thoughts on it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great idea. The standards are just kind of like, and then have some points and start with, prioritizing it. That's a great, awesome idea. Cool. I think we're going to break for about 15 minutes to use restrooms and get ready for lunch. We have our box lunches, but over lunch, I do want to have a conversation, move into the next conversation. So if you can still continue to join us, Pastor Sarah, you're more than welcome to. But we're going to take about a 15-minute break and kind of stretch whatever, get our lunch stuff, and then meet back together. So at about 12:05. Sound good? Okay. What?
Those chairs hurt my butt. Sorry. I saw the chair, I took it.
So we have sweet tea and sweet tea lemonade, and the boxes are, whoever ordered the Tulare bun, they don't have Tulare bun, it's wheat bun. And then whoever ordered, what was the other one? Change, there's another change.
I can't even remember what I ordered, so. Whatever's left over, I'm good with.
Okay. Oh, ice. I'm like, what is this? Ice.
They really think of everything.
Yeah. Okay, so I have to.
This is a turkey on wheat.
That's totally mine. Yeah, that's just, should be 2 turkeys, but that's a cycle can.
Yes, in the break room.
Okay.
There were 2 chicken salads, there's 2 turkeys, with 1 can, and somebody ordered chicken salad and something, but it comes out the side instead of the other thing. I was hot now.
So nice here compared to at home. It's all rainy and gross and nasty.
It was
pretty
raining
gross for
yesterday.
him, really, too. I do think I'm gonna have to leave early. I just
Okay.
don't know how early.
That's fine.
Apparently, my other child is also
Oh,
Your other child what?
not feeling well. I have two who go to the daycare at Wes's church. And
no. Move things a little bit quicker. At this time of stage now, I want to move into just really briefly, I'm going to be looking for some help on this piece of it, to answers. Can you, for those of you who have been here for a while in the Southwestern Texas Synod, give me a list of things that have been happening around faith formation of all areas that you know of, but specifically around children, youth, and family. So, for example, like the youth gatherings, camp stuff. Are there some other things that you know of within this?
No, that's not true.
Those are the things that I know, I've heard about.
Well, I think we can expand upon.
Yeah, that you could expand upon.
Well, we start with what camp does. So camp is anywhere from parents, which means any youth can come with them as well. But overnight camp starts for first grade through high school. Then grandparent camp and family camp is part of the summer. We also have retreats throughout the year that are parent oriented. There's two upper elementary retreats, one in the spring and one in the fall. There is a junior high and senior high camp Olympics. There is like two confirmation retreats that we have, one in the fall and one in the spring.
Congregational day camp.
Congregational day camps, that's traveling.
That's kinder for you.
Yeah. We have a beach camp in Port Aransas, so abroad. Puerto Rico trip for high school youth.
You guys do the Vacation Bible School?
Ours is not called Vacation Bible School, it's called this Congregational Day Camp, but yes, we've been to St. John and Marion to do that in the past.
Well, I was thinking about Elm Creek last summer,
I think we were also there, yes.
but I think it was like a week long.
Yeah,
thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Gotcha.
I love it because I don't have to work through group publishing.
Right. Trying to think of what else we do for youth.
What was the Olympic thing you were talking about?
Puppy, it's actually coming up next weekend. So it's a junior high and senior high camp Olympics. So it's goofy games, but some faith formation in there.
Yeah.
If community also is a part of faith formation.
I think it, yeah.
This goes to our question. What else?
Leadership.
Our WILD program. I think that might be it for camp.
Well, I mean, if somebody wanted to, they could do like, they would do a work day or something.
Sure.
And so that could be.
Yeah, service opportunities,
Yeah.
I guess, too. But we're thinking youth as in not like working either, right?
Right.
Like programs we provide.
Okay.
Junior high, senior high, middle school youth gatherings, high school youth gatherings. What else happens in the Synod? National youth gatherings. Like that.
Yeah.
How about for adult formation, faith formation within the Synod? Would you guys see or hear or have done?
There's a Via de Cristo that happens at camp. I'm not sure who that goes through. It's mostly not our Synod churches, I don't think. But
Because my mom is involved in it.
More so the Brenham area, it seems like, the churches in that area.
But is it Lutheran based?
it is definitely
Yeah.
Lutheran based.
It's kind of
It's
like-
mostly St.
Like a walk to
John,
a-
St. John and Bernie as the kind of the header of that, I think. But it stems from this Synod at some point in time. I'm not sure how you get invited to it.
I'm not
either.
sure either because I've been curious.
Okay.
And there's no website.
Right. Well, I know that happens.
We have a lot more like congregational learning kinds of things than we do
Yeah.
adult faith formation, because we have healthy congregations, we do Missional River. I know I'm missing something, but that's where a lot of that kind of energy has been going in the synod. I don't know that we have a lot of.
Is there like an elder hostel or anything like that? I don't even know.
I don't think so.
I
Is there
guess-
night at the ballpark? I think that happens in Round Rock and then in San Antonio.
I wish they'd tell
I think
us.
so.
I think they do. Again, I don't know. That's definitely not through our synod, I don't think.
No.
Oh, but there is a Lutheran, the one in Austin, off the city Lutherans.
Oh, yeah.
That's
right.
God, who heads that up? He was a pastor at St. John's.
Oh, Tim Anderson.
Tim Anderson, yeah.
That's not really.
But that doesn't say.
That's not really a faith formation thing, though.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, they're trying to work on mission kind of
Okay.
stuff. I mean, I guess technically, but
Pastor Sarah, welcome back. Do you know of anything that's going on faith formation wise within the synod from the past?
My experience here is relatively limited as well. I've been here 3.5 years.
Okay.
So the past is still relatively recent to me.
Got it. Okay.
I mean, if you count like Synod Assembly,
Yeah.
from my experience and view, I don't see a whole lot of that happening, or I didn't see a whole lot of that happening. And if it was geared toward like people who are in the know about those things, like pastors. That's just what I've seen. So.
I mean, campus ministries have events all the time. I would put them down as a program. Those tri-synod count, continuing ed events or.
well, with that is Bishop's Convocation in the fall, but those again are very
Limited.
very roster minister focused, and I would say almost very pastor focused.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious to see if there was anything specifically in the past.
They used to on TLU's campus. I don't know if they still do, but I think the Gulf Coast Synod did it, some sort of event on TLU's campus in the summertime. They still do that? There's Noel Call was part of that. And like Beth and okay.
Must not be.
I know it used to happen,
Okay.
but I'm not sure what it
We
is
used
called.
to have YARPs,
Yeah.
young adult resource. I don't know how far back.
Okay, I've heard of that.
Young adult resource persons, but that was before it was at a time when there weren't a whole lot of youth ministers anywhere in our synod. So I could.
So here's another question for you guys. Now I'm going to really focus in more youth ministry. What do you think, or have you seen from the past into moving to today, number of youth ministers being hired in congregations in the Southwestern Texas Synod?
If you want to tell you if it's increasing or decreasing?
Yeah. Do you think, or do you know?
I would say it's pretty constant.
Yeah.
It's like the congregations that could afford them have them, and the ones that
Yeah.
can't don't.
Don't.
I think maybe just by being on council 4 years prior to this, going through Civil Creek for one, had probably turnover of every church pastor-wise. And I see so many small churches struggling these last 4 years. So I don't know if they would have had one at one point and couldn't afford it anymore after that. I don't know. Maybe they never had one before. But I think recently in the last 4, 5, 6 years, so many congregations struggle with keep the door open. And so I don't know, but just from our point of view, we couldn't afford one 4, 5, 6 years ago. We're getting to that point where maybe we can now, but
So it's interesting, in the ELCA, the trend has been, back in the day, they would have specialized ministry. So the children's ministry would totally focus on children's ministry, Sunday school, basically, Christian education. And then they would have the youth ministry, which is junior high, senior high usually, is what they would have. And then for a while, they would move and gather when they saw the decline, especially around 2008, 2009, the vote and everything, and switch. They moved then to children, youth, and family ministry, and a lot of times congregations would just hire one person to do all of that.
Yes.
And then they would have the Christian education director or the youth ministry director or whatever. But some bigger churches could afford that. And then what they've moved over now with the new language of faith formation, they've taken the children, youth, and family and then turned it into faith formation director. So the conversation now, I'm on the Synodical Youth Ministry Band of Leaders, which specifically is youth ministry in the ELCA, is talking about a lot of these, and a lot of the folks bring it up. The congregations are now asking, because of the financial, where they're at and stuff, it's all just faith formation. But the Christian education is a little bit of theirs, camping ministry, young adult ministry, confirmation, and youth ministry. But really, when they break it all down and look at it, the congregations really want them to be focused on youth ministry, confirmation, youth ministry, which then pushes the others aside. And so they're trying to figure out, how does this all work? How can we do this when you're only one person, you only have so much time and energy and money and focus, but your main, is this, and yet you don't have the youth there. So when you do, So the conversation is around then, what is faith formation and what does that look like in a congregation when you are hiring or calling or whatever staff people to tend to that work. The ELCA also goes to show and say that it's still important, and by faith, where this faith formation language has kind of come out of, it's still important to have the individual folks or the groups to have their individual times. So it's still okay to have Sunday school with the young ones, if that's still working. So it's okay to have confirmation and still do that and really push that. It's okay to have youth ministry and still do all that. And it's okay to still have the adult educations and stuff like that. What they're trying to get at the realm of is to combine and to be more of a community. And how do we, because of where we're at in this culture, the declining numbers and that Christianity isn't important for people and all that, how do we then become the church, be the church with the limited resources and the numbers and everything? And that's where this whole thing of faith formation came in and said, okay, we need to look at this differently. We need to combine things. We need to figure out how to do things. We need to look outside the box and blah, blah, blah. So that's where this is all coming out of. So it's not to say that everything that we've done in the past is bad and that all these different age groups is that we shouldn't be doing these. That's not the answer either. We can still celebrate and thank folks for doing that and have that. But it's how do we move forward in looking at where we're at in the context that we're in and doing that. So moving with that realm, thinking that in that scope of things, and that's why I wanted to ask, what does Southwestern Texas has done in the past of these different areas? Where we would like to move, we'll get to that in a little bit. But at the moment, I want to really focus on youth ministry in terms of, because it sounds like camping ministry has done and is doing great things and continues to do great things. And we want to lift them up and keep supporting and figure out ways, and maybe figure out other ways of how we can partner with camping ministries, because they have it. They can do it. They have the resources, whatever. But right now, Southwestern Texas Synod has had the history of youth gatherings, middle school youth gathering, high school youth gathering. When I came on board, one of my big tasks was from the Office of the Bishop, specifically because the gatherings numbers in the past had declined and the monies had declined. I have in your handouts, there is a Excel spreadsheet of both junior high, middle school, and high school gatherings. One of the biggest tasks that we definitely need to have today, conversation, and I need answers today from this group, and this is this group's task, is to figure out whether or not we are going to have middle school youth gathering and a senior high youth gathering for this upcoming year. That's number one. And then if we don't do it, later we'll figure out what either replaces, or if we replace it, or if there's something else, or maybe we turn it over to camp. I have some history things I want to share from other synods locally, Gulf Coast specifically, and NTNL. I'll share that in a minute. Anyway, so most of our rest of the conversation will probably be around the gatherings here. I want you guys to take a look. We did some history picking, and part of it was thank you to the previous Synod staff, and who are still here too, that have kind of helped shape this together and have kept good records and track. Looking at middle school youth gathering from 2015 to now, looking at the budget numbers, looking at the kind of details of what was spent. Then if you turn the page, all the congregations within the Southwestern Texas Synod that has been involved and how many they have brought in attendance. And this is youth and adults. This is not the congregation attendance is youth and adults together. So the breakoff of the youth and adults is on the first page. So under registration, so for 2015, we looked like 182 altogether were registered. Only 171 showed up. And then you can take a look at the number of adults and the number of youth. The other is basically, I think, the Lyles, is they put the Lyles number in that one. And then the no-shows. I don't know what happened in 2016 numbers. They didn't get recorded, I guess, at that time, but 2017 and 2018. So you could take a look at all these numbers and take a look at the, for middle school. The balance is in the black, that they had positive numbers. So as you can see, even down in 2017, they didn't have much money, I guess, left over, but 2018 we did. So you can kind of see what the trend has been for middle school for that. And then if you take a look at the high school, 2016, 17, 18, and 19, the numbers, and then on the back is the congregations that participated. So you can take a look at those and see. So the question, of course, coming from the Office of the Bishop in terms of is the financial huge. And so I have been tasked to bring to this team to say, we really need to be thinking strategically and figuring out, are these important? If we continue to do them, what needs to be done differently if we continue to do them? Or should we do them? Or should we try to even think outside the box and do something differently? I have had conversations with the team leaders who have in the past put these together. I can share with you, some of them are very gung-ho and want to continue to do it because they think it's really important for the ministries and especially for the congregations that they serve, and especially for the smaller congregations that can't afford to have a paid full-time person to be able to do youth ministry within their congregations. I have had some on the team who have said, I'm done. I've served my times and done different things, and I just need a break. I'm burned out. We're doing other things in our congregation, and our congregation is not going to participate anymore. So I've gotten word of that. I've had a couple people come to me and say, hey, can we do a tri-synodical youth gathering, which means the NTNL and Gulf Coast and Southwestern Texas. So I had done some research. I called up Gulf Coast folks, and I called up NTNL folks. And I first ask them, have they done gatherings? Do they do gatherings? What's the history of their gatherings? Are they even interested in doing a tri-synodical youth gathering with the three synods? Here's Gulf Coast answer. Gulf Coast is a smaller synod in terms of youth ministry where they don't really have a full-time person on staff in the Office of the Bishop. They sort of do, sort of don't. There's a deacon right now that is volunteering her time. Well, she gets paid a little bit, contracted to tend to the youth ministry section of the Gulf Coast. And basically she networks with them once a month. As far as youth gatherings, they used to have their own youth gatherings, and they used to have teams that put them together and would do them in hotels. And then, of course, numbers dropped in finances. Now they have moved them all to Luther Hill. Luther Hill is in charge of the youth gatherings. So the Gulf Coast, the youth leaders have nothing to do with gatherings anymore. They just register their youth at Luther Hill, and Luther Hill takes over. So Luther Hill does the registrations, Luther Hill does the plannings of it, Luther Hill leads them. And the congregations just go. They take their and this is for junior high and senior high. They charge $120 for the weekend. The junior high gathering is in November, senior high gatherings in February. Friday through Sunday. And they charge $120, and it's all hands off. Gulf Coast is not interested in doing a tri-synodical because they are afraid that, one, they don't have the people, the resources to do it, and money, and two is things are going well with Luther Hill. They would like to keep that going, and they just, reality, they said it'd be nice to try it, but they just know that reality is probably not gonna, pan out. So I said, thank you for your honesty, thank you for your time and your, whatever, thank you. Moved on to NTNL. Talked to a couple people up there at NTNL who are very much into it. They do not have a paid person on their Synod staff at all. They have a couple youth leaders who are from bigger congregations that are in charge of their network and puts the network stuff together. Briarwood just hired a new staff person or executive director or whatever, and they're in the J May No More in terms of thinking about what's going on, how Briarwood's going to do things. I had heard through the grapevine that Briarwood was thinking about doing gatherings, but I don't know. They had not heard that because when I shared that, they said, no, we hadn't heard that. I don't know where a couple people had said that. But anyway, maybe that was the wishful thinking of a couple people.
I think their camp structure is just different.
That could be.
Their synod hired an executive director.
Rather than,
yeah. How it kind of
yeah. So right now they put their own gatherings together for junior high and high school. So as everybody else, they had lots of people, lots of good things, and then turnover. 2009, I think they started decreasing. Their junior high gathering is still going well, but they've changed it to where they used to have it all in hotels. Now they do their junior high gatherings in churches and congregations and use hotels around the church to house them. So they do their programming within the congregation and use the congregation facilities for programming, and their team puts all that together and does that. But they use the hotels for lodging. That's the only thing they do for hotels. And their cost is $130 per person, whatever, to be able to do the hotel and the programming piece of that. Senior high, they used to do senior high gatherings and it used to go well until numbers were declining and decreasing, and they found that senior high youth are so hard to get during the school year and sports and homework and jobs and yada yada. They have now bumped it to where they do one day, and it's called day of service. And so they gather their senior high, and they get about 60 people from those that are wanting to come around, and mainly it's the bigger churches, which they understand, that bring their youth, and they charge, I think, $60. They charge for a day of service for 6 hours of service project of some sort, and then reflection time and lunch. So that's what they do. They don't do overnight youth gatherings with the senior high. They do the ELCA youth gathering, promote that and stuff, but they don't do a NTNL thing. They would be interested in doing a tri-synodical with conditions. And I said, well, what are the conditions? And they said, well, we would rather meet in person and talk about those and kind of see what everybody else has thought if we were to do it. Their concern is the same as Gulf Coast, and as to mine, personal, is that because of location, time, I mean, it would all depend on the location, it all depend on the time, it all depend on, blah, 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 resources and all that. They said they think they would probably have a couple of people who might be interested in serving on a team if that's what everybody else would want to do. They'd be entertained to doing that. So it's not out of the question, but it's also not a, hey, yeah, let's go do this right away. But it's a conversation that they're willing to have if we want to have that together. So now brings it to Southwestern Texas Synod. Here we are with these in front of us, and with the, like I said, I do have a couple people who are interested in wanting to try a tri-synodical gathering. Hearing all of that, what are you guys' thoughts?
I say no to tri-synodical, because if Gulf Coast isn't in it, then it's not even worth trying to me.
How about bi? That's not.
Bi-synodical.
How about bi-synodical? Are you curious about that?
Okay, moving on.
I think the youth gatherings are important, personally. but I don't understand why camp can't do them. You know, like, or not so much why that, but like Upper Elementary Retreat, for example, they put that on and it's $55 a kid. Awesome. My parents are great with sending their kid to camp for a weekend. And then senior high youth gathering, middle school youth gathering, it's like $150, $160. And when you're already raising funds for summer trips, it's just an additional, a big additional expense. And I think that's why a lot of my numbers have dropped, is because of expenses. So could we have camp be in charge for a cheaper registration fee?
That's a question I don't know.
Okay.
And that's part of the reason why I also invited Camp Cross Trails to be, because I kind of I've had that same question asked by a couple other folks. And I said, you know what, let me invite Cross Trails, let me have this conversation. I kind of pitched it to Deanna a little bit. We've started that conversation, but we haven't totally tailored that.
We have offered that in the past,
Mhm.
and we did not partake in that. So, just
Okay.
That's a good piece of history to know.
I will say for my congregation, it's just not feasible to have the expectation that I'm going to send my one high school student with a chaperone. So we don't do stuff like that.
Yeah.
If we didn't have the chaperone piece, it would be a different story, which I think would be part of it.
Well, when you were in Blanco, your girl stayed with me.
I did do that.
Yeah.
Yes. So it is a possibility, but I don't know that a lot of the small churches think of that or have the connections to do that. I was able to say, hey, Keisha, this girl wants to go. I can't be there for the weekend. Will you be her chaperone? And that works fine.
Yeah. I know we do have people, like I've had to ask somebody if they could be my male sponsor. Like they have 3 boys and I have 2, and so, hey, can we, because I can't get a dude to go. And so, and that, there's a lot of that within churches that I'm aware of. Yeah.
But what I'm hearing is that Cross Trails right now with the confirmation retreats that you guys are doing, the numbers are exponentially rising. I mean,
we provide chaperones as well.
okay. So people.
For those retreats.
Yeah.
As of right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you were to say, let's just do middle school gathering there and provide chaperones, we could, I don't know. So, I think it can be in the conversation. But yes, those things are increasing. We provide chaperones to that. I think they're pretty economical.
Yes.
So.
Oh, absolutely.
So I did have a couple people ask me, adults ask me, how come, because they felt that the confirmation retreats that Chrysalis and Eber or whatever Cross Trails was putting on was in competition to our middle school youth gathering. And I said, absolutely not. That is not the intention. That was not at all. I mean, I don't see it that way at all. It's an added thing. Cross Trails is doing that. This is what the Southwestern Texas middle team is putting together. They're 2 separate things. It's not competition. It's not for that. But if it's perceived that way, there's a couple people who have perceived it that way, then perception is also a thing we need to look at as well.
Initially, it was geared towards, ours were geared towards smaller congregations without youth workers, which we noticed. And if you star the congregations that are coming to these that do have youth workers, it's predominantly people that do have a youth worker in their congregation that go to the gathering. So we were trying to combat some of that because we knew there weren't going to be chaperones, because we knew, they didn't have to be organized stuff for them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I can sell to my congregation much easier. I didn't end up taking the Sunday, but I could have sold that much easier as I'm taking these students and we're teaching confirmation than I can. I'm taking these kids and I just get to have fun with them all weekend. So I was there for part of it, and I could have taken that Sunday. I think you asked me that question, and I said I don't think that they're in competition at all, because my congregation was not going to camp at all, and now that there is this, we're going to camp. So I can see that as a perception, but I don't think that's what's the reality at all.
Right.
It was not our intent, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder why they would perceive that as a
because we were growing and they were shrinking.
Could be, yeah, could be. But I think Keisha hit the nail on the head in terms of its expense. It really comes down to expenses, the cost. And the team did look at a little bit, we did talk as a team a little bit, when I've had conversations with different team members, looking at, what could we get rid of in terms of trying to lower the cost a little bit. I mean, there's a little bit, but I think the cost will still be up there. So I can tell you right now, I had made an sort of executive decision. I'm like, I will keep the middle school youth gathering on the calendar for now because we did book the dates, just for now until we've talked as a team. But after looking at the past and this year, we did not book for the senior high youth gathering. We did not book dates, and I told the team that, and they were okay with that. They understood. But as far as the middle school, we kept those on the calendar until this team met, and we've made a decision. But I've been tasked now from the office of the bishop is to look at everything and to say, what do we need to do, or what things could we do differently, or whatever.
I think too, high schoolers tend to be busier than middle schoolers, and they're able to drive themselves places, and I think that's part of it as well. Again, it's just navigating the the culture, Yeah. Yep, that's all I have to say.
The other thing that's a challenge.
Go ahead, Pastor Sarah, sorry.
I was just going to say the other thing that I've noticed is a challenge, and it matters more for some of us than others, is just that location becomes an issue, particularly for something on the weekend during the school year. Just in that there are things that I would love to take our youth to, but we're just never going to get there on time. By the time that we get there, things are half over. And so, there's no way to get around that if you're going to have a central gathering somewhere. But in thinking about how faith formation is approached, on a synod-wide level, it's maybe something to keep in mind. How do we keep in touch with the congregations that are not as centrally located as others? And what are ways that we connect with those middle school and high school youth and help them connect with each other, even if they're at a distance? So something to keep in mind.
Yep. Absolutely. Would you all be interested in entertaining the conversation of asking Cross Trails to see if they would be willing to entertain and take over gatherings? Joel, has Shepherd of the Hills participated?
We have not. This is, like I said, just being new, this has kind of not really been on my radar even. So,
yeah, the last 2 years you guys
2016 was the last one that we went to. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Well, y'all are really involved with some stuff during the summer too, right?
Yeah. Like we have summer trips we go to kind of just like this side, just on our own. Mm-hmm. And then we send our kids to camp. I think we have a couple going to Lyle with Luther Hill. And so we're busy. So it's just like, it's hard to find another weekend to squeeze in and convince kids, hey, go to this.
Yeah.
That's something I personally struggle with, is like getting kids to do all the events that we already do have on our calendar.
Yeah.
To add on is pretty difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I've heard one yes for sure. Entertaining conversation, Cross Trails. Anybody else?
I think it makes perfect sense. I don't know why we wouldn't.
I agree. Just have a conversation. I'm not familiar with how it's typically done. What
Typically there's like 4 or 5 youth directors that volunteer themselves, sometimes willingly, sometimes not willingly, and they come up, they plan all the things, and then the synod, we register through the synod, and the synod, so we.
Is it at a hotel or is it?
No, it's at camp.
Okay.
It used to be at hotels, like when I was in high school.
The senior high.
The senior high one, yeah. junior high wasn't even something I think that,
It happened at camp.
okay.
It happened
Yeah.
in 2 weekends. There was another 2
Yeah,
weekends.
yeah. Oh, wow.
Some
Yeah.
point in time.
But yeah, it's just kind of like,
So before they got together, planned the curriculum and movie and
yeah.
just basically rented the camp.
Right. We were a place to feed them and house them. But
Yeah.
that was the it of our
Open the
program.
gate and
Pretty much.
Yeah. Which is also stressful on our part.
Well, sure,
Because,
they can.
yeah. Which I mean, I'm sure it would be stressful on him too, but,
But he does that.
Well, but there's a lot of like,
yeah,
oh,
but that's your job.
Yes.
Whereas my job is not to organize a thing for the whole synod because I have to focus on my own kids.
Well, and there was so much call out, like, okay, now we have to call the camp and ask if this is okay. We have to ask where this is gonna happen. We need to talk about meal times, where all of that, like,
Who do we
it's
ask?
always part of your
Right, yeah.
conversation.
But the synod was in charge of rooming and housing people together too, which didn't make sense to me. Whatever, I don't know, whatever. Like that
Doesn't
should
sound like it made a whole lot of sense at all, so, yeah.
What I see is, I think, is if the Cross Trails would be interested in doing this, the programming piece of it and the lodging, or offering the lodging food and all that stuff, but the congregation provide their own adult leaders and the youth, I would see, I mean, I think that would be, you know, and we as a synod will definitely promote it to all the congregations, you know, and put it out there. And that's basically what Gulf Coast does, is they promote it, you know, whatever, but it's all done by Luther Hill.
And we could still use the Wiles, I mean,
That was a concern for us anyways, that Lyle is technically a program through Cross Trails, and the synod used those people without really knowing them or knowing their training. So we were nervous that we didn't want our name
Attached.
put
Yeah.
on
Yep,
that.
that makes sense. Makes total
So
sense.
just because that was scary for us, because if they flubbed up, then Lyle technically comes on us instead of the synod, even though that was a synod program.
yeah.
Takes
So-
time to explain all of that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things. I'll throw out some initial thoughts.
Okay.
We want your business. We want numbers, and we would love to have money come in. Sarah is correct in saying that we are one of the farthest west places in our synod. So it is difficult to get to. It's difficult from Georgetown, let alone the Rio Grande Valley or Corpus. That's not to say we do not want you to come. We would love to. But thinking about timing, I think is important. And so maybe if it doesn't have to start on a Friday night, maybe that would be important to people. in the
Like maybe
future.
if it was like an all-pay weekend, you could get there on Friday, then start things on Saturday or.
Yeah, holiday weekends are very difficult for us because we book a year in advance. And so those will be tight to find times like that. Other groups and other giant groups. Running numbers right now, we are in between about $115 and $130 for housing, it looks like ish. I'm unsure if there will be a break on that. But I know that we would love to work with you. And then it does come down to chaperones too. That if we were to bring, if we were to staff it like we do in the summertime, that's a lot of staff members that come in, and on that comes expense too. So it's just different as we can do this. And then if you were to provide chaperones, we've got to think about background checks and ways to keep kids safe and also yourselves safe. How do we house you? Do we offer to combine groups or not? Because that could create a crazy relationship or something too. So I think just these are the types of questions that I think should be in that conversation eventually, whether it be with me or Deanna or But I think that we'd love to entertain the conversation as long as these things are thought out. I know that we don't want to waste your time. We don't want the center to waste our time either. You know, we want to make this good for everybody.
What time of year does this usually happen? You said it's on the calendar.
Usually,
First weekend of November.
yeah.
Okay.
We
This
try
is
to
the
do it in
middle school.
October.
Sorry, this is the middle school.
Yeah.
Junior high is typically for
Like second week of February or something.
January.
The senior high one has moved around a lot in
Yeah.
just a few years, because there's always conflicts, and then we kind of settle on the least
Of the
terrible
conference.
day.
Yeah, yeah.
It has been Friday to Sunday as well.
Mm-hmm.
Though when it was on Martin Luther King years, it did go and started Saturday to Monday. So that has been in years past. I don't know if that ever happened at camp, but I know it happened when they were in San Antonio.
Yeah.
So middle school youth gathering is now November 15th, 16th, 17th of this. So that's the third weekend actually in November for this year. Yeah, it's marked on there right now anyway. And right now I only have 2 people who have said that they would be willing to serve on a team if we were moving forward. I haven't actively searched anybody else yet because I'm waiting for this conversation to happen.
Moving forward in the same way, you mean?
Yeah, in the same way. If we were to have, to continue for this one, and then, yeah. I did ask a few pastors, those who have attended the middle school youth gathering and some who have not attended middle school youth gathering, just to kind of say, hey, we have one coming up on the schedule. Are you guys going to be interested in participating or whatever? Some of them said yes, some said no. Some said now that there's the confirmation retreat, we have decided to move toward that instead of the middle school youth gathering. So I think there's a couple that have decided to switch over, which is fine. So just to let you know about that there's some of that. So numbers may be down a little bit more. I don't know if we would pick up any others. I don't know. So what's your guys' feeling for moving forward with middle school for this year? I know it's a big thing to ask.
Is there a reason why they're in the black and the high school isn't? Is it numbers? Is it just solely numbers? There aren't expenses there,
No.
cutting costs, or it's just outrageous on high school?
Because the high school one is such a low
Yeah.
start to begin with. Yeah. Because there's more people spreading out the costs of paying a speaker or supplies and things like that. I'm assuming that's all that it is.
I don't think they had any of that stuff this year. They're still down. It looks pretty bare bones.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just numbers.
Things that are going well that we see are, we have a ton of Catholic high school groups that do Team Acts retreats at camp too. And they bring like 140 at a time.
Really?
And these are the groups that are like booking us over Martin Luther King weekend and like giant groups. And I don't know what kind of church or school or whatever they come from. I'm not familiar with them besides they come to us, but they're obviously doing something right. And I don't know what that is, but they have a ton of people that are trying to do these things. But it's the way they structure it is exactly the same way that the adult Via de Cristo is. They use the same language, they use the same terminology when working with us. And so it's a pretty similar program. And even Concordia Lutheran in San Antonio does this as well. With both they have an adult women and adult men and then a high school youth group that have the same trip. And so I don't know if it is interesting to speak to them about curriculum even, or, why this works. I mean, Concordia in San Antonio is a massive church anyway, so I'm sure that they're not at a loss of children. This might be a tenth of what they have, but.
And there are more Catholics than there are EOs.
Right, correct.
Down here.
Yeah. And so I wonder if it's, like, the program seems neat.
Yeah.
Too. And so I don't know if it is something that we could look at. That curriculum or,
Do you think most of the parents think the curriculum, we've mastered that curriculum because our children are in confirmation? Do they think that that's their kids' curriculum? Possibly.
I wonder if it's because the parents have done it and seen value in it, and so then they send their kids.
That's true.
Because there's the same kinds of things. There's adult Acts retreats and adult Via Cristo, and so they're like, this was really great.
But if you're having a Catholic school, correct?
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know if they're churches or schools or what they are.
So in Fredericksburg, the Catholics put on the Acts retreat, but like everybody, all the kids go to it. Like I have kids from the church that go all the time. And it's a big thing.
Kids from your church.
The kids from
Kids from Fredericksburg.
And the kids from Fredericksburg are different than kids in all of them. Like, I promise. But
That's a good difference.
I think that tagging on a name like Acts or Via Christ, I don't think we do Acts, but something instead of like, oh, formed, transformed, reformed. Well, let's talk about that this weekend. They don't care.
That's a true statement.
Have we talked about working with ecumenical partners? We've talked about working with other synods, but the Methodists don't have a camp anymore. We're about to not have a camp, but they definitely don't do retreats for these kids during the school year.
That's more what I was going after.
Presbyterians don't, yeah.
I was like, I think it'd be smart to look at other people, to invite other people to.
And I think we're one of the smallest denominations in this area. So to look at it, even if we were very specific, like we're going to invite the Presbyterians to do this with us this year, I think we would be looking at a lot more kids. And I don't think anything we've ever done has been like, Luther is God. It wouldn't, as the ecumenical partner, I don't think that I would feel uncomfortable sending my youth there. I might have more questions.
You could call it the Lutheritarian retreat.
The Lutheritarian. I mean, we're doing stuff together. We did the Lutheran Episcopal Legislative event. We do stuff with the Presbyterians. We exist in places with these people. So
it's the same. The camps are all getting together too for the Great Gathering. It's Episcopal, Church of Christ, Presbyterian, everything this year too. So I don't know if it's just worthwhile looking at someone else's program or inviting someone in our program or the nice part about these Acts retreats, it's the same program over and over. It doesn't change.
Yeah.
The content of the program does not change, and yet people are coming and coming and coming. And so the legwork behind it is very different.
And they have youth teams that work like year long to put it on. So it's giving the kids responsibility instead of just like 4 of us hired.
So do the youth come over and over and over, and same youth go each year?
Yeah.
But it's the same.
Yeah, they have participants of the retreat. Usually they're called retreatants. And then they have a team, then they have a team which is also youth. They're kind of like the Lyles of our senior lives, that are these mentors, leaders, do things for people. I don't really know all their jobs. It's kind of secretive, so I don't really know.
Yeah.
But then, total in these retreats, this is the goofy part, is when we get a senior high Acts retreat, I would guess if we have 140 people, there's 40 adults or whatever, like just one chaperone kids. And I would say like 50 participants and then 50 team members, which are all still high school kids.
Yes.
but only the new people are learning, so that's maybe like your freshmen and sophomores. And then the juniors, seniors are the leaders of these people, and then it just kind of rotates through. So these team members eventually become, the participants become the team members, and then the new people come in, and so it's just cyclical. And, the team learns something different about how to serve, or how to be a part of this, or how to be a disciple, as opposed to these people who are learning the knowledge base. So maybe that's from the knowledge, which is the inform or whatever that we had, to the heart part, which is the forming.
Doing the same thing.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry, that throws a huge wrench in what we were thinking.
No, but it's
We
good.
would Camp would also love to take us on. We would entertain that, we would entertain that conversation.
Well, I'm thinking it's April, right? Am I in the right month?
Yeah.
So
It is April, you're right.
maybe this year we do the same thing, and then we have one more year of data to say, this is the trend we're seeing. We want to do something that changes. I think not doing senior high, and I think we already kind of decided that's fine. But the middle school one is not losing money. So I think at this point it's still, and I think there's always a point at which you say we're losing money, but we're doing good work. So how do we fix the money problem so we can keep doing the good work? But maybe it's worth saying we're 6 months out at this point. We're going to do something similar to what we've done in the past, which sounds like it might be a little difficult because there aren't a lot of leaders. And then be able to say, this is what burnout looks like. This is what our numbers are looking like. Let's, at the very end of that retreat, say, we're going to look at this new thing for 2020.
Okay.
Could you have the conversation with Camp Chrysalis and if we decide for them to do it, would that be something that we could still do this year, or this year's kind of out?
That's up to Chrysalis, up to camp.
You'd have to calendar, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, have to
I
check.
mean, you're on the calendar.
It seems late to make that, but maybe I'm just being pessimistic.
It depends on what you want. It really is how intricate you want it to be.
No, I would be willing to entertain the conversation. It's definitely, to have that with the cross trails and kind of see, and then kind of see what I can do and invite folks to start at least thinking planning. For November. And I'm open to checking out ecumenical partners and seeing if there's, even to start to the invitation to participate, not necessarily have to be on the team, but to, bring the youth.
How do we do that? If we, how would that look? What would that look like if we wanted to do something like that? The acts.
Doing something like that. In that model, you would almost have to. That's a whole different. That's totally different. But I mean, in terms of inviting ecumenical partners, that we can. We just talk to the different congregations that are there. So Bishop Sue has a great relationship with the ecumenical, I call them the higher ups, the bishops of and so I can just say to her and say, hey, would you mind putting a bug in their ears and say, would you be willing to partner with us this next year, inviting your folks to come join? I already know the Methodist, the person, Tanya Campen, who is the Methodist for Faith Formation, and her and I have already had conversations.
Is she local?
Yeah, she's in San Antonio. So I could just, we could tell her and say, hey, these are the dates we're thinking about. If you want to put it out to your folks, I'm sure she would. And same with the Presbyterian, Bishop Sue can give me the name of her, and she can give me the name for the Faith Formation person that works in their office.
Might have more help than me.
Yeah, in terms of getting the information out. As far as,
with my local youth minister, like we meet once a month and we shoot the shit and, talk about stuff. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a cohort and 6 of the 9 of us are Methodist.
Okay. So I think getting the word out there won't be an issue of the inviting and stuff like that. It's trying to find a team that wants to, a team put together to start looking at curriculums or working on, the programming piece of it. That's the hardest to try to piece that all together.
How many kids can you home.
If we are wall-to-wall beds, it'd be like, if you were to use every single bed, it'd be like 225.
And that's what
230.
yeah.
Yeah, that's every bed space.
Every bed space.
Eating gets tough in our dining hall around 190. But we could also even shifts, and we could, I mean, there's
Sure, ways around it.
timing stuff that we do.
A&B lunch.
And, I mean, it's true. It's,
Yeah.
it's not pretty, but it can happen.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing is, go ahead and have the conversation with Cross Trails. Begin that conversation anyway, kind of see. In the meantime, I will see if I can form a team together to possibly put the middle school one moving forward. It may look a lot different, who knows. And invite ecumenical partners to bring participants or whatever. Either way, I think we can invite ecumenical partners, even if Cross Trails does it or whatever, and it's first come, first serve, whoever registers, have the number of, maxes out to do it that way. As far as senior high, we know that senior high gathering is not going to do that. And this may not be the time, maybe we need to just kind of think and come back at a different time. What does the synod want to do, or do they want to do anything? What do we want to do in terms of a formation for senior high youth in our synod? Is there other possibilities or other ideas? And like I said, NTNL just does a day of service with their senior high, but they get a small amount, but it's something that they offer. Or do we tap into, I think I told a couple people there is, and it's held in San Antonio every year. Used to be called Youth Encounter, and now it is called Youth Quake, or they call it Quakes now, or whatever. But it's for senior high. And it's an opportunity, and it's held in a hotel, and it's usually held in January or February, the end of February. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they usually have a band come, and then they have a keynote speaker, and then they have workshops. But it's for senior high youth, and it's mainly been Lutheran. It's all Lutheran, so it's not just ELCA. It's Missouri Synod and all the other, it's the whole denomination, but it's all Lutheran. It's Lutheran based. I think I don't know if San Antonio, but I know in Arizona, I participated in Nebraska and in Arizona, and it's always just been all Lutheran. It has not been any ecumenical. It's just been all Lutheran. But they have the bands and keynote speaker and then workshops, but it's for senior high youth. So, I mean, we could put that out there for this next year for something for the youth, for senior high youth, for congregations who are looking for something for senior high youth to do. In the meantime, while we're trying to figure out something, that's another possibility. Or we can, as I'm still continuing to have conversation with Cross Trails to see if they would be willing to put something together for senior high as well. We're in a day and age of we need to, be thinking outside the box of what's.
Look, there's programs out there. Sometimes we are hitting our head against the wall and competing with it. Yeah. We need to.
So I will. Go
Are
ahead.
there other types of the year, or other times of the year that work for senior high? Because I mean, you were saying yourselves like senior high are tough to get on your calendar and all this stuff. Is summer easier than school year? Is spring easier than summer? I don't know.
When I was in high school, I'm sorry, it's one of those. We did the senior high youth gathering like December 27th or 28th. Because
it's just a break, just
enough, and you don't want to be at home with your family all day.
It's right there a week. So it was tough. Maybe
I don't know if that would work, but that's just something.
Would churches utilize that program instead of doing their own? Like you were saying, you do your own things a lot. Would you substitute doing your own thing for having something that's mass gathering?
See, that's so tough, and like I said, I haven't been in my context long enough to really know like the definite answer to that. But especially like this summer, I think that we're going to get a lot out of our summer trip. We're in an affluent community. Like, I mean, we're going to San Francisco this summer. We're going to go do some homeless ministry there. So I'm very hesitant to give you like a direct answer. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I totally
And
get it.
I'm sorry, I feel like it's not very helpful.
No, I get it, but I'm just wondering, how do we, because what it sounds like is, and even prioritizing schedules, is how do we get,
How do we make it
how do
worthwhile?
we make a compromise too? Like, the people that are doing a lot are gonna have to give up some of their own stuff for the benefit of the whole group, as opposed to, these little congregations are gonna have to give up some things too, or, somebody's gonna have to give up power one way or the other in order to make this work. So how do we do that?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that is the question that we will eventually ask is, if we want a senior high mass gathering of some sort with everybody, what do we have to do to make that happen? And some of that is clearing calendars or prioritizing this over something they're already doing or something. I don't know what.
Well, I think some of it too is going to be letting go of the idea that we can't get everyone and figuring out, and we have to make these decisions all the time, right? Like, yes, we're all children of God, yes, we all matter, and yes, we're going to raise this group up at this time. And, Sarah, and I've heard that a lot from Gold Coast and the few groups from Rio Grande that are around, and even Bluebonnet, it's too far. We're not doing a weekend.
Right.
And so we have to hear that from them and then say, we're not excluding you from this, but also we know you're not coming. And maybe there's other groups in the closer part of the center that we're going to have to do that too and say, we'd love for you to come, but also we know there are restrictions one way or another. You have your own things, you're too far away.
This is when I hear from like Mike St. Honest, who does things in the summertime, that he doesn't go to national youth gatherings because the mission trip that they put on is $75 for the week. Somehow he can do that, and it's to me that's outrageous. And I hope that it's subsidized through the church somehow. If it's not, it's incredible. But how do we? That's what he would have to give up in order to do this. Like it would cost a little more. You got to realize that.
Yeah.
So how do we? I don't know. Everybody can do it their own way, and that's fine. But if we want something that is to be inclusive of more people besides just the people that we directly work for, there's got to be something else.
Yeah.
But here's the question I'm going to put in front of you all in terms of when we say the Southwestern Texas Synod, we need to be inclusive of everybody. Knowing that the Gulf Coast, Bluebonnet, and Rio Grande, they're still part of the Synod. And so the questions I'm getting is that, yes, we understand that, but we should not be excluding them. Is there something that we can be doing to try to include them? Or how do we do things that includes them, or figuring out how to do,
Especially if logistics is the problem. How do we get around that?
Well, and actually even the idea that was raised at one point was, the thought of even doing something Saturday, Sunday, rather than starting on a Friday evening. Even that little bit of a change does help those of us who are at a distance. So there could be some of those little things that wouldn't necessarily be tremendously hard to implement, but that could diminish a few of those barriers to those of us that are further away.
Yeah. So, still doesn't answer our question.
I know, it doesn't really.
But I do think it does give us some things to reflect on as we move forward. And I think we can go ahead and start having conversations across trails. I think we do need to start thinking, and maybe the folks, you guys will need to start also talking within your groups and just kind of feeling out, some things of what's happening. And that's part of this team's responsibility, is kind of listening out and having conversations, with one another in your communities and seeing what's going well, what's not. What do you hope the Synod does more or less of? The one thing I can tell you right now, Synod Assembly is going to be so different this year from what I've heard, but the other Synod Assemblies have been.
that this is a time of learning. We're going to be workshops. There's going to be some intentional table talk conversations. There's going to be time to get to know folks, and that's part of the relationship building is in order to have these things, we have to build relationships so we can trust one another and have conversations to do that. So that's helpful. And I think that's what I see with this team is that we can build relationships with each other here, but then we go out and have relationships and be able to hear and bring back to the table of how to make this a better synod in terms of faith formation. All right. I think we will kind of move on that level. I will begin to have conversation with Cross Trails. In the meantime, I will see if I can pull together a team or kind of parallel. Let's see, just to kind of see. I'll keep you guys up to speed on that. We'll keep the dates of middle school on November for that. And I think senior high, it's okay to table and just say that we're in the work in progress of thinking outside the box and figuring out. Just to let you know, a few other things too. Senior high, from what I have heard and everything, in the past you guys have done what was called the Bishop's Youth Leadership Award. That is, this year is the final year, and we are going to award them at the Synod Assembly. So one of the recipients is from Bethany, and the other one is from Palm Valley. And so they will be awarded there. They get a $1,000 scholarship to their college of choice, and then they get a little cross medallion thing. We have decided this was kind of in-house from the bishop, who has said, you know what, we need to be using this money in a different way of resourcing. And we are coming up with a different way to lift up youth leaders. We, through the ELCA, and I had been a part of this, so I knew this, and I brought it to the bishop. The ELCA has what is called the ELCA Youth Corps Leadership Team and the ELCA Youth Leadership Summit, which is for high school youth, and is to be raising up youth leaders, and who are in high school, to come to the summit to continue learning leadership skills. And each synod, and I know Southwestern Texas has participated. They didn't participate this last year because it was too late by the time I got here, and then other things have happened. But I know they came the year before. They took a couple of youth. Each synod is allotted to take 2 youth, and they're supposed to be the top youth leaders within their synod to this summit in November. So in November, it's going to be in North Carolina, Luther Ridge Camp. Each synod is to appoint 2 youth leaders in high school to come to this. So we are going to switch and use the pretty similar format of the Bishop's Youth Leadership application, but we're going to open it to 9th through 12th graders, and then the bishop will then select from those applications 2 youth to go to the summit in November. So it's lifting them up that way, and ELCA pays for everything except for travel. So the only thing the synod will need to pay for is the travel, and that we can do that. So that's how we're going to switch the Bishop's Youth Leadership Award from scholarships and costs to the Youth Leadership Summit. And then they are going to come back and then can be involved in our synod and do other things. Yes?
So if a kind of 9th grader go every year, like if they win every year?
They have to be selected.
Right, that's what I mean.
But they could.
If they're selected every year?
They could, yep. They could. So the ELCA is putting together an application, and they're helping all the synods do this. So they're putting an application process together, and then we can add our own questions to it, which we probably will add a few, and then the bishop will select. So that's one thing.
When will this be available?
So we're hoping, like, it's in May for sure. The questions and stuff will go out in the invitation. It's going to be definitely lifted up at Synod Assembly. Okay. We're going to talk about it at Synod Assembly, and then I'll probably have something in the e-news to do about that. So the other thing that I wanted to point out to you attention to is on the back of I think it's just what is faith formation in the back of that. I wanted to show you, because this is part of that falls under the faith formation youth ministry, is my synod position description as bishop associate. As you can see, this was put together, Bishop Sue put this together, and then got it approved through Synod Council. As you can see, it's just like all job descriptions. It's pretty general. But for the faith formation piece, it's pretty general there. So this is a working document. Bishop Sue said that if there's more things that the Faith Formation Mutual Ministry wants to add to my thing, let me know. Let me know, and then I can let her know. We'll put it on. But this is what it is. I just wanted you guys to be able to see that, so you know, because to help with that. The other thing that this team will need to start, we will start having more in-depth conversations, and this has also been a historical piece I have heard, is that this synod, it does not have a good handle on child protective policy. So it has been brought to my attention that some congregations still do not background check their folks who are doing youth ministry or whatever. And so we need to start really be thinking about and how can we educate them and get them to be a part of, doing that. And second of all is some of these things are starting to change the ways that we do things. So for example, this last senior high youth gathering I had put into place because after talking with our Southwestern Texas Synod insurance group, they had said that each congregation needs to start providing a proof of liability, an actual copy. So not only, the camp has, and they have their own form, and they have their ways of doing it, but for the synod to have it, since it was a synodical event, we need to have, especially if it's with youth, liability, physical copy in our hand to say, hey, yes, they are, covered. I also have understood, and then Jay can say more to this about background checks, because Deanna had shared this with me too, is that eventually I think it's going to come down to the point where everybody's going to have to prove that they've been background checked. So one slipped through the cracks for a junior high, middle school youth gathering. I found out after the fact that one of the adults was not background checked. And so we are now going to have to make sure that we have proof that, if this is going to be a synodical event, we're moving that way, we just need to be in protection and make sure that everybody's protected and in the right place, policies and all that. But anyway, one of the things that we will be talking more in depth is, do we put guidelines or recommendations for congregations out there so that they know where to go to and how to put their, or do we?
I think it's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Folks who've been doing business as stagnant for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Congregation checklist of some sort.
Yeah.
So I put together some stuff on that that's supposed to be up on the website. I don't know if it is. Okay.
It still is.
But we had a lot of conversations about the liability piece of that because there's so much of, if the synod says you have to do this, then the synod becomes liable if the congregation doesn't. So it's all out there as like, here's a sample of minimum requirements for a congregation. So we can't say this is what we expect.
Where is that located?
I think it's in the youth.
It's under the youth portion, faith formation portion of the website.
Okay.
Yeah, it's under the safe gatherings, safe thing. And Pastor Jessica is right, is because when I talked with the church mutual, whatever, as a synodical policy, we cannot say congregations, you have to do this and blah, 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 because we don't have the control and we don't want that control to say, that because all the liabilities will come back under this. Right, how you police it.
Yeah.
But we can have samples of things and highly recommend congregations do this. And the other piece of it is I just had a conversation with a congregation because they were talking about it, is saying, I know for a fact, because I've worked in congregations in Arizona anyway, the insurance will not cover certain things if they didn't have their adults background checked and stuff like that. So it varies. So if something were to happen, and they could be liable and it could be not good. So child protection stuff, we're going to have to really talk a little bit more about around that. Some synods do have the guidelines and stuff and some things put together, and I did some research. We can go over that later on. And I know the camp has their own thing, but we just need to
it would be interesting for this group to, we could glean some of that information from our accreditation standards of this is what an accredited facility should be doing. Right. And so even if it is, did you do your background? We can say, here's our recommendation to follow these guidelines. You don't have to say you have to or whatever the language is here, but at least if we could say, did you look for them on National Sex Offender Public Registry? Did you
Yep.
do their state background check? Did you
Yep.
do all of this stuff? I think did you call their references before you allowed them to volunteer for you? You know, those kind of things would be easy. So just taking the HR section of our accreditation manual and saying, did you provide them with any sort of training? What did you do to get them hired on as your volunteer or whatever? And so I know that it's a lot of work to be accredited. That's the hardest part. Is there's a lot of paperwork, and somebody has to be dedicated to doing that. But if it protects you, hopefully you see the value in that.
Right.
But we could steal the wording straight from our manual, and
Yeah. I know a few years ago, Jay and I.
we sat down and did that.
Yeah. And we went through and it was very helpful because I was one of those, we still don't have a written policy put in place, but at least I have things that I can do to cover my,
Yeah, so when they're just for her congregation, so it'd be a similar thing, we just earmark page like this page is 50.
yeah.
So these are best practices, whether you decide to do them or not, it's your own business, but. Right, but.
To do
Well, the
doing.
weird thing, if I remember correctly, about the ELCA is technically we could say you have to do this, but then we're liable, but we're also still liable even though we're not saying. So if something happens in my congregation, I can get sued, the synod can get sued, Bishop Sue can get sued, the ELCA churchwide can get sued, it goes all the way through. So,
Yeah.
it's mind-boggling that people don't want to, one, protect our children.
Yeah.
That's the most ridiculous thing, is that people are like, this will cost us money. And so the only way to combat that sometimes is to say, well, look at how much money it will cost us if we get sued.
There's a $10 million lawsuit as opposed to a $35 background check.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
There's $35 background check and then $40 sexual abuse training.
Yes.
Yep.
And we have some
$100
congregations that do
person.
it very well.
Yep.
I know Triumphant does.
Yep.
I mean, you have to have been in the congregation, you have to be a member, and you have to have been there for so long, and then lots of stuff.
This is Gardner,
So,
and now
yes,
they're doing training, they're
Yep.
having us come and do trainings with their staff.
awesome. Because they've done, is it Safe Saint? That's the Methodist one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something
Safe
like
havens,
that.
safe
That's a
gatherings,
really
there's
good one.
safe havens, safe gatherings, there's several things.
I know the Methodists in my cohort, they just got hit hard. They had to do so much training.
But they have a structure that makes it so that
Exactly.
the larger church can say you have to do this.
Yes.
And we
So,
don't have a
Tanya was telling me
How
about
do
that.
we get that?
We would have to change the entire
Policy.
Evangelical Lutheran Church in America constitution. Yes.
That has to go from churchwide all the way at the top, and we have no
it's not
control.
gonna happen, because it affects way more than just that one thing too. It would affect how our pastors are placed and things like that. But, yeah, because I was the intern there, and like my third day of work was training after I'd had background checks before I even got there. I had to go do the same training that anybody else who was gonna work with you had to do. They're awesome. So that would be a good place too, that we could point to
Yep.
and say,
Yep.
this is how you do it.
And which church?
Triumphant in Garden Ridge, northeast San Antonio.
Chris St. Clair.
Got it.
Yes,
Oh,
there you
okay,
go.
yeah,
And
yeah.
we do our abuse training online.
Yeah.
We
There are ways.
make our staff members take it before they even show up. If they don't have it done, they can't do it.
What would be nice on that end is if we had something, and I don't know cost-wise how it would work, but if there were a way for us to more effectively integrate congregations into a synod level thing. And again, maybe it changes liabilities and things like that, but like me running a background check on my 1 or 2 Sunday school people is significantly more expensive than a huge congregation that is able to do.
Oh, yeah, you can batch search these and,
Yeah.
sometimes your insurance will do it for you for free.
Yeah,
So-
over, when I check with the insurance company here, they said they can do it minimally. But safe,
They want you to do
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
safe gatherings, and this is something I do want to put out there, and you guys, and I know you guys had started the conversation, but Safe Gatherings has worked with North Carolina Synod and a couple other synods, and for like, it's $800 for a whole year for the synod, or for one time, I think. Then you can use any of their materials, their background check company, their all their videos and everything, and let their congregations use it and all that. It's umbrellaed all under theirs, and the synod, we buy into that, and then they do, they have that. So we could do that.
That sounds fantastic.
See, and I think so too.
Everybody in church, go get your background.
I don't background check people.
Yeah.
Because there's always, they're next door to us, but that's not, and it's cost prohibitive for a small congregation to background check a Sunday school teacher. I don't have anybody going off with kids by themselves, but I know that they need to do it, but also trying to convince someone that they need to do it is much more difficult.
Can you tell me about your program a little bit?
Safe gatherings?
Yeah, so what did you say was the cost of that?
It was about $800 for our synod to participate
For
in,
every-
for everything. Yep.
Would that include us?
Could be, yeah. You're part of it.
How far does that go out?
Yeah, no, it could, because
Background check or what?
yeah, no, it could.
Pay for half of it.
That's true.
Fine.
Happy with it.
It really could, because, but that's how, I work with Donna, her name's Donna Macy, and she explained the whole thing, and North Carolina Synod does it, there's several other synods, ELCA synods that have paid into it, participate, and then all the congregations can sign up as many as they want, and then you have all the trainings that's available to anybody, everybody. And
That would be great.
It's online.
Seems like so.
Yeah, why are we doing
I was gonna show you ours, but now I'm like,
The young generation, what do you use?
I was expert online training.
Okay.
And part of ours is that we have to have a state mandated abuse and reporting course
Right.
that is
Yeah.
state approved, which this might not be. And there's very limited numbers of these that are. But ours are $200 and then $200 for the first 12, and then $15 the staff member after that. So it's still not horrible, but that covers you through the state's duty of care, child welfare and protection laws. And then above and beyond that, then we'll do personnel and have our child abuse policy is much more strict than the state's even.
Yeah.
I would invite, the next time we meet together, I would invite Donna to come and online and have her talk to us. Just she can describe the whole thing, and then we can, as a group, decide. Yeah, to do all that. So, okay.
I was like, this isn't even our background check. This is just our state training.
That does all of it for $800?
Also,
Yeah,
yeah.
we
The
pay
entire-
for the whole thing.
The whole-
I was gonna say, we could get a
Go
couple
for it.
congregations to pick it up.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you, Debbie, for coming. Thank you. I will have notes up about you. Thank you. Thank you for that. And I'll have notes in that, and then we'll figure out a next date to do digitally, to do all that. Okay, no, that's good, but that's another topic that we'll need to talk about. The next thing is we'll probably do this digitally, is I will come up with topics that we definitely need to start having conversation. And then we'll prioritize of how we want to handle these different topics and then put them together. But right now, my number one thing was the youth gatherings. We definitely need to get that under figuring that out. So in terms of, thank you, Pastor Sarah, for hanging on here too for this whole time. In terms of for the moving forward now, there you go. Whoops. Moving forward, we are going to look at, I keep doing that. No, I keep moving forward. I also wanted to let you guys know I added the conference maps because I think it's going to be interesting. I need to email these out to you yet. These just got updated, literally just got updated. The conference maps have all the congregations that are in the Southwestern Texas Synod, and they have the current worshiping average attendance. So you guys can kind of take a look and see why, and in terms of, if we're asked to do faith formation and what that means in these congregations and how and what and all that, you have an idea to do all that.
I think so. For moving forward, I will put the notes together. I will put some topics. I think I'm going to ask you guys to be doing some reflecting and then to email some topic things that you think should be under faith formation within the synod, and then we'll kind of start prioritizing and start working from there forward. Checking in, how are you guys feeling? I know you guys came into this going, what in the world is this about? Why are we doing this or whatever? What's your guys' thoughts? How was today's conversation?
I appreciated it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. I really wasn't totally sure what I was getting into with this, but I think it's just good to hear different perspectives and how we can grow together.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay.
I think we really focused on youth, and it sounds like this needs is bigger than that. And I know that was a key focus of today as well with youth gatherings. But how do we? Now all I'm thinking about is maybe we don't do any youth gathering and we just do a gathering. Like how? I don't know what that would look like or feel like at all. It seems like a giant nightmare, but. But having tracks within that, or I just have no idea what to think for sure. But I know it seems bigger than just youth. I know that camp is appreciative of this conversation too. I think that we do the same work as what this is. I would really invite campus ministry into this conversation too. I think would be smart.
Okay.
And Kara is right here. And I don't know how connected she is into that or not. But Brad First is very connected into that.
Okay. Pastor Sarah, any comments or reflections from today?
It's a fruitful conversation. Certainly was helpful for me to kind of get an understanding a little bit more of where things are at, just in terms of everything within the synod and with your work as well in all this. And yeah, I think there are some exciting things going forward, and I think it's an exciting time to think and dream together about what's most important going forward. So thank you. Thank you for letting me be a part of it, even from a distance here. I appreciate your thoughtfulness.
No, I totally appreciate, we definitely appreciate you being a part of this. And especially I wanted to get folks from the Bluebonnet and Gulf Coast and Rio Grande to have at least to be a part of this and the conversation and get input from you guys, because we are synod together. So we'll definitely keep you on the list as long as until you tell me, if you have somebody else that wants to take over, but you will be the key person for right now. I'll keep you in that loop.
Okay, sounds good.
Super. Okay, so no, this was very helpful, and what I see, and the reason, like I said before, I really wanted to invite Cross Trails to be a part of this for a while is because the synod really values their ministry, and we really want to be partners together. We don't want to see competition. We don't want that perception of competition at all. And so I think it's really important, and we want to be clear on everything in language and everything, but we have our work cut out for ourselves, and I think it's a start,
This is going back to the middle school and high school things. Do we have evaluations from youth?
I did. I could share I don't know about the past. I do not know. From the middle school, when I did a evaluation, put it out to all the emails I had, was basically the parents and then the leaders, and got a few back, but it's based on the parents or the leaders, not the youth per se.
What value or what do youth need or want as a part of those? I think would be an interesting question. Same with high school. It's just what do you want? Do you see value in this? What do you want to come to? I think adults can plan all they want, but if they don't see the value in it, then they're not going.
Yeah.
Or if their parents don't see the value in it, then they're not going.
Yeah.
Well, and I know with the middle school, a lot of it is, and I heard it from a pastor,
There were a couple youth were hemming and hawing whether or not to go or not go, and part of it was the parents. Parents are like, no, you're going, and your confirmation, you have to go.
Yeah.
Youth didn't want to go, but they went because they were part of the confirmation group and because they're, whatever. So it comes, that's the confirmation piece of that. But as far as the rest of, with the youth and senior, I don't know. But that is a good question. Maybe that's what we need to do is you guys can go back to your youth and ask, not just in general, what do you guys want from a church or from a?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, what I'll do is I will tape up all these notes. I'll put some prioritization or some topics or whatever. I'll invite you guys to put some topics in, and then we'll kind of prioritize digitally. But let's try to get another go-to meeting or at least a digital meeting on. From what the group had formulated together, they said about June. And I know that's big time camping season for Cross Trails.
I'm sure we can see it. If it's not a full day like
Yeah, no,
this.
it'll be,
Okay.
the digital meetings will probably be an hour, hour and a half at the very most. We make the in-person ones a little bit longer, especially if we're requiring people to come for driving. We want to make it worth
Yeah.
the time.
If it's in June, it would be easier for camp the week of the 17th or the week of the 24th.
Okay, that's good to know.
The only thing that I would say, if you want campus ministry to be involved at all, is that those of us who are involved in that will have a Lumen conference, like the 19th through the 22nd, right in there. So campus ministry will probably be busy then. But
How about June 27th, that Thursday?
that would work for me.
That one will work.
And would mornings or afternoons be a better time?
Morning would be easier for me, but
Okay.
As long as it's not like 8.
No. It would be like 10 o'clock.
Okay, that's,
Yeah. June 27th?
Yeah.
Is what we said?
Let's do June 27th at 10 a.m.
and that's online, right?
Yes. And it's to go to meeting or Zoom or whatever, and I'll send that link out later.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you very much for being a part of this. Thank you for saying yes, and I will look forward to working with you all. And like I said, we have a big job ahead of us, but it's good. All right, I'm going to go ahead and let you all go on with your day, and we'll catch up later. Thank you, Pastor Sarah.
Well, thank you.
Go ahead and do that.
I don't know where I am in this.
We're like, there you are. You just zoomed in on me this whole time. Just chewing on my eyes, eating my food.